Welcome to very honored Frater BT's Esoterierd Podcast, episode 135, Frater Quasar and Our Olympic Friends. Welcome back. So this is sort of a sequel to episode 130, which is here, I think, where Joe Zabinski and I get to talk to Frater Quasar, who is developing a system, I would say. I don't know if he would say that, but you might have noticed on the thumbnail for this image, which looks like this, it says Arbatel 2 up there, I think. So it's not, he's developing on the Arbatel a deeper relationship or a means through which to develop a deeper relationship with the Olympic spirits and the Arbatel. I'll let you get it from the interview rather than trying to put it in my own words. But it should be interesting. Joe and I certainly enjoyed it. And I suppose, without further ado, let's get to that interview, shall we? Oh, waiting room. Okay.
Hello.
Hello, I can hear you. Oh, and I can see you.
Hooray.
Hello. Welcome. Yay.
How's it going?
Good. How about you?
Oh, fine. Things are good.
Am I too loud?
No, you're not too loud.
Okay. You're a little quiet. It's not too bad, but
okay.
I don't know. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah, I could try plugging in another microphone if you want.
It's fine.
All right.
I'm sure it'll be
great.
all right. Is that Pantocrator behind you?
Oh, that's Saint Cyprian.
Oh.
Dun.
Oh, Cyprian. What's his shtick?
What's his thing? He's the patron saint of magicians.
Oh, I should know about him.
He's an ancient bishop of Carthage that was and he was martyred for his just for being Christian, actually.
Right. Back in the day, that was all it took. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was let's see. He was a pagan magician who learned all over the Roman Empire on how to be a pagan magician. And then he met somebody named Justina, who and basically their story was it's the sort of thing that could still happen today. Basically, he was a pagan magician, and this client came to him and said that they wanted a love spell to be cast on Justina. And so he tried to cast a love spell, but Justina's the love spell just wasn't working on Justina. Right. And he eventually met Justina. He found out that the reason why the love spell wasn't working was just through her faith. She was so protected through her faith that nothing could get through. And so he was so he had already learned from all of these different traditions. And he was like, oh, well, this is a tradition that I could learn something from. And so he started this relationship with Justina, and Justina basically taught him about Christianity. And so then from there, he eventually became a Christian bishop. and then he was martyred. But he sits in this between world, between like Christianity and paganism, and also but like between like all kinds of things, it turns out, like between the living and the dead, between like the natural and the artificial, between like anything between, like he is working with. And so if you establish a relationship with Saint Cyprian, then like the first, well, lots of things happen, but like the first thing that happens, you find out about all like the between places,
Huh.
Yeah.
Betwixt the light and the darkness.
Yeah, exactly. That's where he stands. Yeah.
Very cool. So how have you been? It's been a few months.
It has been a few months. It's been a few very expansive and abundant months.
Oh, good.
They've been really good. Yeah, we've gotten new digs. We sold a house. We like in my mundane life, things are just expanding and growing. And then in my magical life, like things are expanding and growing too. I'm working with the Enochian squares at this time, and I'm scrying through the whole elemental series of squares, which is a lot, but a lot of the time the projects that you can call a lot are also like the most productive, and they're the most, right. They teach you the most,
Now the squares, does that refer to all the squares on all the various tablets?
Yeah, it's all the elemental tablets.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so yep. Not union.
Oh no, it's the tablet of union as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
And point. There's like a different god, like from all the four teams on Enochian chess. There's a different god that can apply to each square, or how does that work? So
that applies specifically to the servient squares. So on all of the elemental tablets, you have like a variety of things, right? You have like a gray cross, you have like sephirotic crosses, you have cherubic squares, and then you have servient squares. Well, the servient squares, they have like a variety, like even within them, they like have this like a variety of things going on.
The subservience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like you have like there's like a spirit of the square, which is and it like the Golden Dawn works with it in Sphinx form. There's like a Sphinx who's like this creature, this like elemental. He's almost like an elemental golem that is like the essence of that square. But then also over that square is an Egyptian god form, or an Egyptian god is like over that square, right? But then besides that, you have like the whole angelic hierarchy too. There's like lots of spirits that are running around in there.
I had a friend, maybe, I don't know if there was any overlap, but you might remember a hegemon named Frater G back in the day.
Do remember the motto.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he's a good buddy. He saw the light 12 years before I did and got the hell out. But and that was my first real heartbreak as far as back then we weren't supposed to talk to people after they left. I mean, you remember those. But anyway, so he told me that we were doing it wrong because the elemental grades, the premonstrator was still taking on the Isis god form, the imperator was still taking on Nephthys, but really we should be taking on the hierarchy, or the pantheon, or the sub-pantheon that is, I mean, there was a connection with Enochian chess. It's not that Enochian chess was the source of the information, but Enochian chess makes great use of the same data
Hmm.
That there's instead of Osiris, it's someone else. Instead of Isis, it's someone
Oh
else.
yeah. Like each of the elements have like their own version of the various Egyptian gods.
Right.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, and the thing is, it turns out that like initiatory history, like how an initiation happens, has changed like radically, like over decades, you know. And
Mm.
so like the original neophyte initiation is nothing like not
Yeah.
nothing, but it's different from like the Stella Matutina version. And
Right.
so
Which is
like
the snapshot we get in the Golden Dawn books by
yeah,
Regardie, right? Is
exactly. Yeah.
pretty much how it
Yep.
was in what, 1915, 20, something like that. Like,
Something like that. Yeah. So
yeah,
like
yeah.
you get like the Falcon version of everything, and then in the
Mm.
background there's like the Mathers version of everything.
Right.
And as part of like the description of chess, like Mathers was describing like these alternate god forms, and I don't know whether those god forms were actually used in elemental
Mm.
initiations by
Right,
Mathers, but
right.
they could have been,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like the original, like you had the original Golden Dawn, but then the thing with Mathers is like after so there was this like very famous schism that happened around the turn of the 20th century, right?
Hmm.
But then after that, Mathers, like, we had the Alpha and Omega, and that was happening in Paris. Um and like it doesn't fall off like the historical record entirely, but it gets a lot more obscure after that.
Right.
And so for all I know, like Mathers totally decided, oh, we're going to use these other god forms, and it just depends on
Who knows?
like
Yeah.
what version of the Golden Dawn you're talking about.
And it's, I mean, from a bird's eye view, it's kind of arbitrary at what moment in history you choose to make your standard. But then that kind of
Yeah.
veers off, like you can take that to the furthest extreme and then you're a chaos magician, where it's like,
Right.
I'm going to
Yeah.
set the
Or
standard right now, like,
right,
this is how we
right.
do
Or
it.
you can be like, yeah, you can be a purist, and then
Right.
you're,
But a
and then
what
you're
purist? Yeah. A thalamic purist, a Parsons purist,
right.
you
And
know,
then you're working with one school, but that
right.
means that like anything that wasn't in that school, like you're just sort of
Doesn't exist.
doesn't exist,
Yeah.
exactly. And you're essentially you're playing what is it called, like when people dress up in like Civil War costumes.
Yeah, yeah. Society of Creative Anachronism. Yeah.
Right, yeah,
I
yeah,
always used to
you're
mention that and people hated it. I'd mentioned that along the side of calling us esoteric nerds.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh
that's
my
just
gosh.
general. It's like the
Someone,
nerdering starts early, and then you get
yeah,
deeper and deeper in.
someone commented, there was a guy who assumed that I, have a background in 20 different occult schools, and I was like, no, just one, and it's sort of a specific version of that one, and
Yeah.
and so then he was looking at my ritual videos, and it says, traditional Golden Dawn, or somehow I used the phrase traditional Golden Dawn, and he was like, what's traditional about the Golden Dawn? And I'm like, oh, okay. He's thinking traditional as in, waspy or Roman Catholic, like standard conservative human being,
Oh,
and then
okay.
applying that to Golden Dawn and saying there's nothing traditional about the Golden Dawn. I'm like, no, traditional Golden Dawn as in we pretend Crowley didn't exist. And he was like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, I get it.
yeah, yeah. It's not like, oh, this is Orthodox Golden Dawn.
Right. I mean, people have tried that. I mean, even in our group, I think we were one of the ones who tried that the most. Like, let's see if we can blend, exoteric Roman Catholicism with Golden Dawn, and see which parts fit. I don't know. It works for certain people. The only problem is when people come in that are allergic to, exoteric Roman Catholicism, then they tend to have a problem. But
Yeah, yeah. And they tend to not be able to see, they like like if you're allergic to some like version, to some like, if you're allergic to a spiritual tradition, like all you really see is a spiritual tradition. And like allergy is the right term for it, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
because it's like if you have like springtime allergies, once the
Mhm.
allergies kick in, like that's all you can think of. Is it?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
In the same way, it's
Yeah.
like once you encounter something that disagrees with you, it's very
What we
difficult
started
to
what we
not
started
focus.
doing was doing the Eucharist ceremony, from the neophyte, and but combining that with the Watchtower and the Litany of Laredo and a whole bunch of Catholicism and John Michael Talbot playing and all this other stuff. And
Yeah.
so people, and then we'd say people would come to orientation, we'd tell them to come to that first, and sometimes they'd
Yeah.
just leave after that. They'd be like, no thanks, I don't need to stay for the orientation. And I mean, that's better, I think, than having someone get all the way to Philosophists and then they're like, okay, I'm ready for Portal, and they're expecting Thoth and just pure spirit coming from the great oneness, and then they get in and it's, you are my hiding place, oh Lord. Like, what the fuck? Here's your rosary. Like, it's like, we're just, how long am I going to be doing the rosary? For the rest of your life. Like, I dedicated 7 years to this. I cut off friends and family. So yeah, that's I joke about it, but it actually happened. And if any of those folks are listening, blessings to you. I don't mean to make light of your trauma, but
Who knows? Maybe they went back. Maybe they were like, that rosary is really helpful, and then
yeah,
so now they just do it.
they found other ways. Yeah, but nice. So is this the new place we're seeing, or is this the previous place?
Oh, yeah. This is the new place.
New place, minus furniture. Oh,
minus furniture right now because the furniture's still downstairs. It still needs.
We're here for the first moments of you and your new place.
Yes.
That's very special.
The furniture is either still arriving or it's either it hasn't been delivered yet or we just haven't moved it yet. We've moved all the little things, but all the big things need to come up.
I think our guest has arrived.
Oh, nice.
Frater QSAIR, are you with us?
Hold on.
Hello. All right.
Hello.
We're all here.
Yes. Awesome.
Very nice. Good to see you.
You can say QSAIR or Quasar.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, one of the self-initiate class said Quasar, and I just
how cool.
I know.
How cool. That's with the Hermetic Mystery School.
Yes.
All right. RC. Shout out to my buddy RC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Hello.
Hi, this is Sophia. She just wants
hello.
Hi, Sophia.
Hello. This
is
Joe
nice.
And Ed.
And the bear is who?
Rainbow Fluffy, is it?
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good name. It's a good name. I don't know if you can see my chicken up here. Got it.
Yeah. I'm loving the lights.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was why I wanted to do it at night here.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that it's very warm here in Goa, it's very tropical, so night is a bit better for wearing these heavy robes. Yeah. Robes like this are for, Germany and England and stuff like that, not for equator. These are not designed for the equator. There's a reason why people are walking around in shorts and nothing else, So, very nice. So you saw Joe and I talking about the Arbatel in episode 130, right?
Yep.
And something happens.
So I kind of just basically ran with what you guys were saying, which was the whole applying the whole Chaldean order.
7 septenaries with 7 aphorisms each. So they're sort of like chapters and verses. 7 chapters, each with 7 verses. And each verse starts with Saturn, then Jupiter, then Mars, then Sun, then Venus, then Mercury, then Luna. And each chapter, the first chapter is Saturn, the second chapter is Jupiter, And so it's sort of like sub-tattvas, but with planets instead of elements. So you start with Saturn of Saturn, then Jupiter of Saturn, Mars of Saturn, and you work your way through all the 49 permutations of planets within planets until you arrive at the very last aphorism in the final septenary, which would end with Luna of Luna.
So I basically just kind of went through, and I sort of just started to kind of dip into that and sort of look into it. Let me get my little, because I was going through my journals and kind of trying to put the chronology together, because it's one of those things that I've kind of had it in my head just because I'm kind of constantly working with it, to actually sort of formally put it down. You want to come back in?
Sure. Sometimes you have to work with something a lot before you before you can even like really codify it that way, right?
Yeah. And then once you've worked with it too much, then it's hard to explain because your brain skips over things that people need to know.
Yeah, and especially when it's kind of an ongoing thing. So basically, I just kind of, kept listening to that episode and kept looking at the Arbatel. It was quite interesting because that episode sort of brought me back to the Arbatel, because RC was having one of his free classes, and it was about Fool, and so he was briefly explaining about the Arbatel, and I remember I wrote down in my magical diary, I literally put, the Arbatel has me. I must have the Arbatel. And this was March 2023. So then you guys were in October,
November-ish.
Yeah, because I jumped on RC's Enochian, and I was trying to do, because the whole gist of this is basically tarot. It's using the tarot. I don't know if you guys have ever read Tyson's or heard of Tyson's Portable Magic.
I haven't. I know Tyson, but I mean, I don't know him personally, but I haven't seen that book.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how I actually came across it. All I have in my diary is that I have it. And basically his kind of premise is that you take your tarot deck and, particularly if you're sort of perhaps low income or not near a temple or a solitary worker, and you use your tarot deck to basically create a temple. And he gives you some sort of basic magical rites and things to do through that. And then he kind of gives you a sort of carte blanche at the end to kind of play. So I was doing, is it the Heptarchia course that RC does? And I was kind of going, okay, I wonder if I can do sort of that through tarot magic. So I made little, sorry, I just want to.
No, it's all good.
I made like little. So I basically took like one of my tarot decks, and I kind of went, okay, I'll just kind of do it with this. Note that here. So I made little card-sized Enochian tablets.
Okay.
And kind of, I made like the llama, and then we've got the, all of the seals and stuff. Ancient cardboard, and I was kind of tinkering with that, and I was having some success, but it was kind of like it always felt something, I don't know, a bit too big, a bit too complicated to kind of jump right in and do sort of straight away fresh. So then kind of I sort of took a break from that, and because your podcast was just before Christmas, so I kind of got myself the Arbatel for Christmas, and then just started sort of tinkering with that, because I was going to move away from sort of because one of the steps was obviously the Heptarchia is kind of about the 7 planetary spirits through D's system. And I was like, well, maybe if I look at the Arbatel, because obviously D worked potentially with the Arbatel, it was almost like a kind of tutorial primer in a sort of like video game kind of metaphor. Like if I jump to the Arbatel and do that, and then maybe I can come back to the Enochian. And I haven't gone back to the Enochian, and it's been well over a year. I mean, I'm not like, you know, off Enochian, but it's like I kind of went back in and I was like, yeah, that's cool. But the you
Yeah.
know, the Arbatel, the Olympics are very much my jam.
Mm, very
Yeah.
nice.
So yeah, I kind of from there, I've basically I mean, I just did simple things like kind of going through and where you guys had said. So, for example, you know, the first septenary, the seventh aphorism, um, you know, kind of little mini grimoires for each spirit
Mm-hmm.
based on the Chaldean order, the kind of key
Mm.
that you guys gave to sort of unlock it. And then I
Right.
kind of dug into that a little bit further. Cool. Sorry, she's just sitting, listening in, drawing cats. So yeah, I kind of went further, and I've got like, so it is potentially kind of like having 7 mini grimoires in a way.
Mm.
Because, for example, you can have, I mean, let's go with Aratron because today is Saturday, and I just burnt a little myrrh.
Nice.
Yep. Here we go. Sorry, I'm on a bit of an old Chromebook, so I have got Windows open already. But right, so yeah, taking the key that you guys kind of gave, I kind of ran with that. So I've got, for example, yeah, I think they can see. It's just that
Nice.
we can't see the camera because I've tabbed out.
So is that a picture of a cat? Is that
It is.
do you have a cat?
We don't. We want
Mm,
Oh,
to. We're
okay.
currently renting, so it's sort of it would be, and we're in the
It's
middle of the
difficult.
town,
right.
so it would kind of be.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, I
Mhm.
would let it roam, but I think Sophia's mum would like it to be a indoor cat.
What is
Right.
Yeah.
that cat's name?
What's this cat, Angel?
I'm gonna make it a grey and orange cat.
Grey and orange. Do you have a name?
It's probably gonna be rainbow. It's probably gonna be rainbow.
Okay. Rainbow. Cool. Yeah, we love that. Yeah. Yeah,
Wisdom
so for
speaks.
example, um, I mean, you know, it all ties in because rainbows. I mean, that's one of the things that I put in my little hand
Mm.
written grimoire I'm doing. Was it?
And Sophia. Wisdom.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
you
I
have
mean,
this you have this like this grimoire in miniature now, right? And
kind of. Yeah.
do you
Mm.
have the different do you have like pages set aside for each of the spirits?
What I kind of have, where I've been using the sort of tarot. So initially, I was kind of doing it in a very contemplative way. So I would be kind of like, so say for now, here it's the hour of Jupiter, day of Saturn. So I would read the second aphorism and the doodle off the top of my head, the eighth aphorism. So second and eighth aphorisms, and kind of have that as a sort of contemplative kind of. The way I sort of saw it was like through doing that, I'd kind of immerse myself in a sort of amness, you know, like a kind of attuned myself to a sort of Olympic current, you could say. And then I was kind of like, okay, but I, like Joe's saying, kind of how would I work with a sort of specific individual spirit? So I suppose, for example, you could do as is given in the Arbatel. You take the, you know, the high planetary hours of the day, and you do kind of as the Arbatel instructs. You say the prayers, and I was kind of like, okay, but we could kind of bolster that within the tarot framework because where you're creating a microcosm of a temple, you know, it's like what Joe was talking about once with, I think it was RC, but also with you about, is it residency? about how you
Yes.
kind of continuously put yourself in a state of open receptivity.
Yep.
So there, that kind of amness idea was just putting myself in that open receptivity and kind of aligning myself. But again, that's something that's kind of given in the Arbatel. Hold on.
Yeah.
Rainbows
Yep.
and colors.
It's beautiful.
Oh. Yeah, so I was kind of like feeling that there was a kind of you know, I was in that sort of current, and then I was like, but how do I work with a specific spirit? And I remember I was just kind of like, you know, I'd written some kind of notes about something that Farrell was saying, and just ideas about how would that spirit, because I was thinking I could do it like sort of work with elementals through the tarot. But then one day I was just kind of looking at like, I think it was probably Parfit's Kabbalah, which isn't necessarily about tarot. And I think I was just randomly reading. And then he kind of says that, so for example, where are we? He talks about the minor arcana correlating with the planets. So I was kind of like, okay, well, if the where are we? If we have,
in the sense of like the Shem correspondences.
potentially, I mean, that's something I stumbled on after I'd done it. I was kind of poking around, like I was listening to Joe talk about Agrippan astrology, and sort of poking around RC's Hermetic Mystery School, and he had a Shem section, and there was a part where it was about using the minor cards to manifest the Shem angels, and having very sort of similar elementary correspondences, or have similar astrological correspondences. So I was like, you know, obviously, ideally, where the aphorisms are a combination of planet, you want to use something that uses a combination of a planet to kind of work with that spirit in a way. So we had, my Chromebook is a bit old. So the 4 3s would be corresponding to, say, Aratron. So the 3 of Wands would be Aratron of Fire, but that would be understanding and absolute. Yes, Angel. You can show off the rainbow pens if you want, because rainbows are very, very Olympic.
It's on point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got some rainbow stuff happening here too.
Exactly.
Even here.
Oh, and that. Yes, of course. Yeah. So then I would just kind of. I closed the tab. But basically, what I would do, for example, I might bring it up on my phone because it might be easier. So let's say we are working with because I've got like 12 different documents open at once. Just because that's all the stuff. So, for example, you would put, so say we were doing the 3 of Wands. So that would be Aratron of Fire, Understanding and Absolute. So you would have the World card for Aratron or Saturn. You would put that in Aquarius for a lunar aspect. Or Capricorn for a solar aspect, and then you would put the Sun in Aries, and those correspondences I got from, because I jumped from Parfit saying that the suits correspond in that way, to then again, it was kind of like the resource. I'd already collected a lot of these resources anyway, and then I kind of found that I had them. So I picked up the Golden Dawn Magical Tarot just because I wanted a new deck to do divination with. You know, I'd my Crowley Thoth deck I'd been using, but I'd given that to the Enochian spirits, and I was like, you don't want to confuse your decks by asking them to do
Right.
different things. Yes, Angel. You want to show some of your teddies? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I bought the book and deck just for kind of divination, named Akamoth, another sort of Barbello Sophia. I mean, she's a lovely deck. She's very simple in her answers. You know, she's very personal, just kind of like she just wants to get to know the people that she does readings for. It's never anything too heavy. But anyway, so yeah. So for example, I then would go into the here. And so we were talking about the Three of Wands, for example. I mean, obviously, this is an amazing book. Doo-doo. So here
it sounds like you're close to the tarot. Like it sounds. I mean, if you're naming your tarot decks and they have personalities, then you're pretty close to that as like a mystical symbol, like as a mystical symbol system. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was kind of like 12 or 13, like just kind of going through. You know how you have like a clutter cupboard at home, and it was like my parents' kind of clutter cupboard. It had the Shatner biography that I bought my dad that he never read. Obviously because he probably just disliked Shatner actually, but but in there was my mum's Rider Waite, and I would just remember when I was like 12, 13, just taking out, and that had a similar book with it, like, you know, a kind of because you get obviously your little instructional leaflets with your tarot. Oh, a penny, thank you, Angel. But she had bought something similar on this lines for the Rider Waite, and I just remember I was doing readings for friends, readings for myself, you know, and I picked up tarot decks and kind of had them over the years. Like I had a Geiger deck. One of my witch friends gave me that because she just didn't like the energy of it. And
Right.
I mean, this was when I was in my 20s, and I was a bit of a, you know, like a sort of edgelordy kind of like, you know.
I was a fan of the Geiger deck too. I never read.
I mean, it is a beautiful deck. I do love.
Well, his art is beautiful. Yeah. I got to see him in person. I didn't actually meet him and shake his hand, but I was in the same gallery with him, and I watched other people meet him and shake his hand once. But anyway,
it's cool. Yeah, I sort of awkwardly stood next to Alan Moore for about 20 minutes.
Oh, cool!
I know.
Nice.
Like he was smoking the like fattest blunt like joint, and I was just there with my little herb vape, and I remember I tried to say something to him about magic, and he just like, you know, proper schooled me, and I was like, yeah, I know nothing. But I mean, this was years ago. You know, again, this was still when I was kind of like dabbling and sort of, you know, it was more about the, you know, the armchair magician, as it were. You know.
There was I'm not going to tell the whole world specifically, but there was a phrase connected to you leaving the armchair, right? Something like that. Unless you wanted to share that with everyone. But
no, I was just kind of like, you know, I was kind of like, if I'm gonna, you know, have here we go, some more rainbow cats.
Oh, it's turning into a rainbow cat.
Yeah,
that is a rainbow cat for sure.
Is that the same cat, or is it a new cat?
It is the same cat with added color.
Same. Wow. So it's being elaborated now.
With a white like necklace, or is that a white spot? Oh, okay.
She's got a pure white light tickle tongue.
Very nice.
Yeah, no, I was, you know, I had like, you know, I had one email for kind of junk, and one email was kind of meant to be for sort of, you know, serious stuff, and then just kind of like, and then I just thought, if I'm going to do say RC's self-initiation course and things like that, I might as well just have something for that and I just thought, yeah, leaving the armchair, because I'd spent, you know, I'd been looking at, I've been looking at magic and stuff and been in and out and dabbling since, say, 13, 14. But it was only in really recent years that I was like, let's do it proper,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of beautiful thing about kind of finding you guys in RC is, like, I remember in my late teens, I was in Bell Book and Candle in Brighton, and they had Rigardi's Golden Dawn books, and yeah. And they had Rigardi's Golden Dawn books, and I just read a bit of Crowley at that time, and I just remember, Crowley was like, "Oh, the Golden Dawn's gone, and I destroyed it," and blah blah blah. And I just remember thinking, well, I won't pick up something about that, and yet ever since I've been like, I wish I picked up Rigardi, because I just, But it was a journey. And literally, yeah, I mean, it was kind of out of the blue. It was towards the end of lockdown. I was getting into finally catching up with.
Very nice.
I was just finally getting into, like, podcasts. I was like, so what are podcasts, and why do people listen to them? And then I was listening, I think it was a Rogan, and then there was I think I can't remember his name, but there was a Hare Krishna guy. So I went from Rogan to the Hare Krishna guy, and then from and then I just picked up I think just like something through one of the early episodes of Magic Without Fears, and it was like, oh, the Golden Dawn's still around. And it's still around.
Nice.
And yeah, no, I mean, it's there's going to be a surprise one, but we're having a cat at the minute. Yeah, because I've been talking to sort of RC about this whole the Arbatel thing, and he's kind of like yeah, he wants to kind of maybe do it as, say, a course or something, but he's like, kind of carry on with it, it's good, like, because I'd sort of been throwing bits at him, and it was sort of piecemeal, and he didn't really quite understand. And then one day I kind of I suppose kind of got it together in a way, and just got enough of it to send to him that he kind of sat back and went, oh wow, okay, yeah. I get what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, rainbow floppy is this one?
Lots of rainbows.
Yeah,
very nice. So the threes of course go with Saturn on account of Binah. Is that kind of the idea? And then Chesed, the number 4, the 4s in the tarot, Jupiter, and so on through Luna. And then so you were talking about working with different elements, working with the Olympic spirits in different elements. Now, is that something you developed?
I don't know if I would say I developed it, because, like, a lot of this is kind of like you were saying, like, I stumble onto something and it's kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of how we've interacted with the Shem using tarot.
Right.
So a lot of it is kind of like in that kind of very grounded, mundane way, kind of going, okay, this is work that someone else has, and it's just kind of I'm discovering it and then broadcasting it in my own way.
Right.
And then but a lot of it, I mean, it does, I know it's very cliche when we talk about these things and we say these things, but it doesn't really feel like something that I'm kind of writing.
I was just wondering if you had, if anybody had worked with, like, Bethor of fire or Bethor of water before you. Is that something you heard about, and then, or something you?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I can tell, no.
Okay.
But again, possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's yeah. Come on, Angel.
Oh,
More,
okay. That's the same cat that you drew.
yeah, yeah.
I understand now.
These this is the mummy and her sweetie. Um,
Nice.
yeah, so I suppose perhaps in that way, it's something that I've stumbled on, you could say. Um,
So working with a spirit with through a particular element, would that change the spirit? I think I already know the answer is no. So that would focus the spirit in a particular area of life, or in a particular, like working with this Saturnian being on the emotional side of things versus the mental, rational, airy side of things, or the physical, like we need this to manifest today, kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that is something you could kind of eventually end up doing. What I've just,
Mm,
I mean, where I've been sort of kind of putting this in alongside kind of day-to-day life and the GD self initiation.
mm,
It's again, it's sort of more about that kind of residency. It's sort of just kind of tuning the vibration or feeling like I'm back in sync. Like, I kind of gone whole hog into the self initiation thing, kind of left the
mm,
Arbatel alone for a bit. And it
mm.
felt like the Arbatel was like, talking to me saying, come back and just, come and spend some time with us.
Yeah.
So again, I just sort of did a bit of that just to kind of feel that I'm back in the sort of tune with it. But I suppose, yeah, you could obviously use it in a thaumaturgical way, I suppose.
Mm, mm,
I suppose really I'm sort of gearing more towards the theurgic.
mm,
Um,
mm.
and
Right.
if something,
But a sort of
mm,
it's an effective theurgic, but it's a passive theurgic too, right? Because
mm,
you're not like going out and evoking spirits. You're much more. It sounds like you're much more like I'm going to this place, and
mm,
I'm showing up in this environment, and
mm,
I'm going there again and again, and so it's almost like it's like a yin way of interacting, right? To mix
mm,
metaphors, like
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
it's a yin way of theurgy rather than the yang way of theurgy, which is like setting up the circle and then and then like forcing the spirit into your circle and like that
mm,
kind of thing. Instead, you're just going out. You're going out to the wilds and you're just sitting there, and which is fantastic because like you're how do I say this? Human beings are we live in time, right?
mm,
So we wake up and we go to sleep every day, right? And we have a relatively active role in the world where like we retire and then we come out of retirement and we're active again, right? And then we retire again. And in that way, our consciousness is dynamic. It's moving out and it's going back, moving out, going back.
Mm,
Spirits are much more static. They just hang out somewhere. And you can go to find them and they're there, but once you find them, they're like this constant presence that's just like they're just like there like all the time.
yeah,
Um, which is why like shrines and things are so effective
mm,
because they accurately reflect the reality of that spirit where they're just sort of sitting there just like boom like watching and like you see that with angels a lot, but you also see it with like saints and other spirits.
mm,
And so your way of just sitting there and seeking residency is a very spirit like approach
mm,
where where like you're meeting them on their own ground, but you're also acting like a spirit because you're just
mm,
sort of like showing up.
mm,
Um,
mm,
yeah, so
and
I
it's
like it.
nice, it's refreshing too, because it's usually when people are approaching something like the Olympic spirits, it's because they want to get something. I mean, and
mm,
of course
mm,
the Arbatel goes again, goes around and around that point. But just to say, I want to get to know you better, like the way you described your tarot decks, that new deck that just kind of wants to get to know you. It's not delivering any dire prophecies or anything, just kind of like, hey, well, did you notice this? Okay, me too, and so this is like going into the energetic presence of the spirits, and the spirits were like, hi, did you need something? No, just saying hi, just want to see how you're doing. That's good.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Thanks for turning up.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. But again, just burning some incense for them, maybe leaving a little bit of food around. Yeah, I mean, it's outside of kind of, I suppose, focusing that kind of current through using the tarot. Yeah, they are, like Joe says, they are kind of, I was going to say earlier, it's a theurgy thing, and if there's any thaumaturgic in it, it's almost like it catches me by surprise, because it's almost like them going, hey, did you maybe need this? And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks very much. It's not like Joe saying, or like old kind of, that kind of way everyone does kind of approach grimoire, which is like, you will do this, or I will Yeah, that's what I loved about Joe's idea about residency. I mean, if it is his idea or if it's someone else's,
it's not my idea. That was revealed to me by an old teacher of mine. He was teaching me about, I think he was actually teaching me about path working, but it's one of those things where, like, when you have like a teacher student relationship, then, like, have you ever you actually see this a lot, like with martial arts. So I learned kung fu for a time, and so, like, with Japanese martial arts, it's very like you show up to class, right? So, like, you go to the dojo, and then you have a lesson in the dojo, and then that's it. You leave and party's over, right? With Chinese martial arts, it's a little bit different, because they, like, you show up someplace and you take a class, but then you go and have lunch with the teacher, and you, like, just hang out with the teacher for a while, right? And it's not a secret, but like the way that you learn Chinese martial arts is not really in the class, is by having lunch with the teacher over and over again. And the reason for that is because that teacher just showed that teacher, like now they're just in a natural environment, and they can just say stuff like off the cuff, I had a magical teacher who was teaching me, and, like, there were all these classes and everything, but then it was always like we would just, like, go outside, and he would, like, there was somebody else who needed a cigarette, and so, like, they would go outside. It might have been Edward that needed a cigarette. But, like, somebody needed a cigarette, and so, like, we went outside, and like, we were just hanging out, and then, like, people would just be quiet for a while, and then, like, these pearls of wisdom would come out, and at the time, like, you wouldn't even realize that they were important. Like, it was just this, like, off the cuff comment, because it really was like the person saying it didn't even realize really that what they were saying had, like, profound consequences, but they would just
it's not even really zen. It's just
and one of those things had to do with residency, that that having that being like it's about being in the same space with the spirit, because and
like a slow burn koan.
Yeah, exactly. Like a slow burn koan. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And I feel like the only thing that I could add to that idea of residency is that there seems to be two levels to the residency, Or there's two big markers of like how your relationship with the spirit is changing due to residency. And the first marker is this, and I think you've hit this already, like the spirit starts to give suggestions, or they start to just, they'll just like hang out with you and they'll start to give advice, right? And so, and because they're static, right? So they're outside time and they're just watching all these things happening. And like, so they're seeing you and they're seeing what's happening with you because you're establishing this relationship with them. And so after a time, they're like, "Oh, you're the one that had this stuff going on," and and I think that I just don't think that you should be doing that because and so they'll start to give advice. So that's the first stage of. That's when like, oh, I have a relationship with the spirit now because they have something to say, But then the deeper stage happens when they don't have anything to say. And you're gazing at them and they're gazing at you. And you know that they can see you and you know that they can see you and you can see them. At that point, then you're like, oh, we're in now because we're in the same space. And so from there you're recognized. It's almost like it's a whole process of just like recognition.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was that like mini grimoire like got my attention because there's like this shamanic tradition where the different pages of the grimoire have different the different pages of the grimoire. It's hard to describe. Essentially, there's a series. The grimoire is actually a truly magic book because each like physical page is consecrated to a different spirit. And so like what happens is the art on that page is that spirit's art. So one thing that could happen over time, like as you establish a relationship with these spirits, they could reveal to you different like ways to contact them. So they could like I mean, this is essentially like how every grimoire was ever written, right? Where like you establish a relationship with them, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, I know you. Hey, if you need me, or if you need me, then here's
on
the
WhatsApp."
symbol.
Yeah.
They give you like their WhatsApp number.
Yeah.
And they, and then you have that from then on. If you put that on that page, then slowly over time, that the pages in that book become associated to different spirits. From there, it gets very powerful because essentially you have this like, wow, I'm thinking of the same teacher right now. You almost have this like, you have this book of context, this book of spirits, right? Where you can just like, and at that point, it's like you have such a relationship with these spirits that like you just open up different pages, and you're like, oh, I need Bethor's influence here. Flip there, Bethor's influence is here. And you can move right around, and you can move like right around in that book, and the book becomes a very potent. It becomes a very potent talisman, not only because of the breadth of the different spirits that are in there, but also the depth of the relationship that you built with them. It's just this, it's this physical. It's just this talisman that you can just like move around with you.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, and again, that kind of like ties into the Arbatel itself, doesn't it? Because it talks about, the power in names, the power in stones and herbs and books and things like that. It's I got the sense very early on, and it's a sense that keeps coming back to me, is that it's very holographic, it's very self-contained, in a way. Like you're saying, in a way, you can kind of, because the way you're sort of talking about the grimoire that you can produce, like I kind of still feel like that about my, my untarnished hardback. Like I literally, like, because I've got a little sort of like routine that I'm kind of trying to get back into. And like you're saying, just going to the book and touching it, you can just feel that you're already in that presence and in that current. And then when you're sort of reading the relevant aphorism, definitely.
There was an occultist with a great library who passed away in 1995, I think, and I don't know his name, but I know that his books started turning up. And I was working at a used bookstore, and so this one book came through, and it was, I wish I remembered which book it was. It might have been Man and His Symbols, but it was a Carl Jung book. And you open up the first page, and it's from the Library of Israel Regardie. And all through the book were these little pencil notes where you say Carl Jung talking about the anima, and Regardie wrote HGA ? And just so much, like, because we know how he kind of wove Jungian ideas and into his approach toward expressing the Golden Dawn symbolism. So this was part of his research. I ended up gifting that to the Ciceros, because I felt like it was in line with their current.
Yeah, I keep saying to RC that I do need to get just like another version of the Arbatel that I can just sit and scribble in.
Oh, right. Make notes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because this one is the one that, this is it's the first and only one, so it's the one that it's special.
Yeah,
take it out, read the Latin, love some Latin. But I do need, like you're saying, not in the sense that I want it to end up like Regardie's, but just because, like you're saying, you just
make notes. If thoughts occur to you while you're reading it on a particular Thursday on the planetary hour, and then you could just kind of like underline something and highlight or
absolutely.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean that's a little habit sometimes that I've got into, and when I have been journaling, is that like I'll note down the planetary day and hour of certain things. I mean, going back through and putting together the timeline of this project, and obviously even today, a lot of things happen on Saturday. A lot of things. Like for me, Aratron does seem to be, and again, I'm sure because I have looked at my birth chart, but like I haven't like really sat with it. But I'm sure that would yield some surprises, but also some answers, kind of obvious answers.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about that process and how it developed from there? I mean, if whatever you feel appropriate, is appropriate to share publicly.
I mean, this is the thing, is that like where I've got all of these like Google Docs open and I've got all of these notes and things, I do kind of want to, as well as doing a course with RC, I do kind of want to do it as a book, because I want to give something back. It's again, I feel that this is something that was kind of given to me, and it's come from so many people. Like, the GD's influence on it, like, has been like either intentionally on my part or just through sheer accident, has been immense. And so I kind of want to do if there is a book, I do want to do a chapter about the GD, but I want to do, going back to that whole earlier thing, I want to do kind of like a sort of history of the GD from kind of the beginning of Fade Ra to like now. I kind of want to, if you guys were happy with it, to have like mention of you guys, just
Sure.
like even if it's just like, and now we have the Esoterinerd Podcast, you know,
and Magic Without Fears.
yes,
Of course.
But I mean, at the end of the day, like, again, a lot of my practice is kind of down to, things from Esoterinerd as well. Like
Oh, wow.
like my motto, Quasar or QSAIR, that is from listening to you read the farmer. Yeah, is it he
I
who
got a
sows
lot
on
out of that too. I mean,
yeah.
reading it was one thing, and then compiling it all into one episode. And in case anybody's interested, that's here. I'll put a link later. Anyway, so they reading it and then compiling it and then listening to it again, and then things started clicking. I mean, things were clicking all along, but then at a certain point, I realized, oh, it was his office. I mean, because, people have different rooms that are important. My dad, he called his den. I call my office. Actually, I call mine my office temple. And, everything has a place. Everything is there for a specific reason, from my travels, from different people who influenced me, mementos and all of these different things. And I realized, that's exactly what he did. I mean, he had CRC, assuming he was a person, assuming that, a lot of things, but he created this room that represented him, that represented his soul. And then without him in it, they were able to piece together the story of his life based on this room that he created. And, it took me 3-4 listens to finally for that to click. I mean, I guess having gone through Golden Dawn, there's a very specific relationship that you have with the Vault of the Adepti. And so it took, my brain wasn't able to connect, that with something so mundane or, something so reachable and tangible. It's supposed to be supposed to break your brain with all these different squares and colors and things, but it can be both, I think. And
in a way, that kind of having something hidden in plain sight is kind of very Rosicrucian as well, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, it was there all along.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so I think that I eventually the aim is to sort of perhaps do some kind of a book, and have kind of those things just there for other people to have. I mean, a lot of things I do kind of, I found myself on the there's an Olympic Spirit subreddit, so I found myself there, just kind of talking to other people, including, if I can, Sora ZSD 23. This is her little book about the Arbatel. It's quite good, very good. She's on the subreddit. So it's just kind of chatting with other people, sharing just kind of ideas and things. Simple things like rewriting the prayer, because in the actual Arbatel itself, it talks about the solar spirit, and it talks about like very specific things. So I kind of sort of changed it to so yeah, in the original it talks about the spirit NN of the solar order, and things that I've asked or that disclosed to me the cure for edema, and I've just I just kind of rewrote it to give it a sort of all-purpose feel, to sort of say, like, to inform and teach me the things that I have sought, cure the ills that I confront, and something like that. So it's kind of an umbrella. So sort of like, just kind of like, I don't know, like just passing sort of tech notes to each other, if you were to use that kind of computer metaphor. But yeah. And again, like you were saying earlier, we get a lot of people come in and they're like, I want to impress my girlfriend. Like, what's the best Olympic? And we're like, well, maybe no, but, again, I mean, having become kind of a moderator in the forum, I've sort of like, I don't necessarily like shut people down and kind of like, have that whole kind of haughty attitude of like, you get out of here, blah, blah, blah. I'm kind of like, well, if you really want to, I try and sort of subtly turn them onto the Arbatel in the hope that it'll click with them in a way beyond the, that kind of vending machine, that kind of vending machine.
Whenever you're in a position, whenever you're in like a position of intellectual authority, it gets interesting. I mean, I guess the only thing that I would suggest is to be humble. So intellectual authority gets like interesting, right? Because like unless you're a megalomaniac, you're not there. You haven't really chosen that relationship necessarily, right? Instead, the other people in that relationship are putting you in this position of authority for specific reasons, because either there's something that they're trying to learn from you, or you arrive by reputation and they're just like, I heard this guy knows what he's talking about. And so they start to treat you as this person of authority, right? And so once you're there, then there's a lot of different attitudes that you can have. But if you think of it this way, at that point, you're the person with the teacher costume on, right? But the secret is, underneath the teacher costume, there's a student costume, right? All the people in the student costumes don't even realize that they have a teacher costume underneath there. And so when they have something to say, listen to them, because they're unwitting teachers. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah. So I see a lot of the time, I see like spiritual teachers. They'll like shut people. They won't shut people down, but they'll definitely they'll give their own opinion before they listen to somebody else's opinion. And the thing is, like if they were to listen to that other person's opinion, that's going to, that'll blow their minds if they give it a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, you weren't even talking.
No. I mean, that's why I love the Arbatel, though. I think that's why, it really appealed to me, was because it is about the good of the neighbor, isn't it? And that could be the kid coming into this subreddit going, I want to impress my girlfriend. Can Bethor help me? It's like, well, I'm not going to say no, get out of here, but I'm going to say to you, maybe look at this, look at that, that's what I love about it. It's weird because it just taps into something very, going back to that sort of finding my mum's tarot when I was 12. I mean, I had spiritual, magical experiences before that. And I remember one of them was just this really profound dream I had when I was like 5. And it was like, I was in this giant space, and it was like somewhere where everyone was kind of like, I wouldn't call it a factory, because it sounds like everyone was in a giant sweatshop and they were happy, but it was somewhere where, I mean, and this was obviously back in the 80s. So for my little child brain, it was like we had people in wheelchairs who were working, and it was like, in a way that may not have necessarily been as ubiquitous as it is now, or I was just not perhaps so aware of it back in 1985 or something like that. And I just remember, but I remember in the dream, it was something that I was like, the dream kind of implied that it was something I was responsible for, like having this opportunity for people to just actualize themselves and kind of do something with their lives. But I didn't take it in an egoic sense. I was just like, that's pretty cool. Isn't that great for everyone? And I don't know whether that was because, and again, it's something that I found in hindsight is that I kind of, sorry, the sun's coming through.
Yeah.
how apt. Yeah. Like in hindsight, I went to some like Anglican schools, like, you know, and it was just kind of seemed normal. But then when you kind of encounter people here in the UK where they haven't necessarily gone to an Anglican school, and you go up to them and you say, "Hey, do you remember Harvest Festival and taking food to old people and making sure they've got, like, you know, grains and soup for the winter?" And they're like, "No, what?" And you're like, "Oh, do you remember dancing around a maypole in your shorts and plimsolls in spring?" And they're like, "No." And you're like, "Okay." So I think, again, that's just something, again, about the Arbatel that sort of just really appeals to me, is it tickles that little Anglican boy who just loves. And again, that's something that's just kind of stayed with me for most of my life, is that I just enjoy seeing other people happy. Like, you know, I've worked in care, I've worked in retail, I've worked in hospitality, you know, and I think it pisses off a lot of my managers, like, you know, because I'm not necessarily about the profit.
Right.
You know, I'm more about, particularly when it was the healthcare, you know, I would say someone came in and they had like quite a strong like health issue, and they were like, you know, oh, I'm like, oh, it's just, say, a £5 bottle of B vitamins and you'll feel better. And they're like, oh, we don't really have it. I'd be like, oh, okay, you know, but yeah, I'd buy it for them and give it to them, you know, because again, I don't go home happy after a day like that thinking, oh, I've made lots of money, but I've made lots of people miserable. And, you know,
Right.
I would be thinking about their suffering, not necessarily, well, yeah, you know, like they're all, even if it's minor suffering. So yeah, again, I think that's just why, to have gone on a bit of a deviant, I think, you know, again, that's why the Arbatel appeals to me. And again, why in a
Yeah.
way, like the GD appeals to me. And, you know, and how it always appealed to me, but I just thought it was, you know, anyway.
Yeah, there's a common thread, I think, like the Arbatel and the GD are
Mm,
kind of from the same tribe, if you will, you know, like the you know, the oath, the neophyte oath. There's
mm,
some who'll read that and say, "What? Well, who are you to say that there even is a good and evil, or that, you know, that why shouldn't I do evil?" And but then there's a type
mm,
of person that'll read this and say, yes, you know, and maybe it's because of like you said, you know, I my grandma wasn't married to any one particular Protestant denomination,
mm,
but sort
mm,
of, you know, floating between them, and her influence was, I don't know, you know, it wasn't just her influence. My dad had a bit of the Buddhism that also leaned toward goodness for goodness sake, you know,
mm,
and,
mm,
you know, like just sort of that, the Christopher Reeve, uh you know, Superman kind of spirit of
mm. No,
of
yeah, yeah.
wholesomeness that isn't, you know, not every, it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, you know, but yeah, the Arbatel, it really hits you know, it hits a home run, you know. That's an American metaphor, but, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as far as that goes, but it's not going to necessarily appeal to people who are, you know, the first thing they're interested in is the goisha, you know, or something like
Mm,
that. um but yeah, I don't know, I'm just
mm,
rambling
yeah,
on, no aim or direction.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad we're talking about this, because this is really it's like this undercurrent of occultism
Mm,
that you don't, it's always in the room, but you don't always acknowledge it. It's that this it's almost like, it's almost, it's hard to describe, but basically, like, really good people often are attracted to occultism. You know what I mean?
mm,
Like, really, and it's, and a lot of the time it's because, well, I don't know why. but I feel like a good part of it is because you know that the world could be a beautiful place. You know that the world is a beautiful place, and you know that you can contribute to making the world a beautiful place. You know, and a lot of the time, it's like I don't know. A lot of the experiences of occultism like bring you to. They're very, very beautiful experiences, right? Right, like some of the greatest experiences in human that are possible for a human being to have can be had through that. And once you've had an experience like that, then like your priorities shift, you know. And a lot of the time, people are attracted to one another and attracted to these groups because because they've had these beautiful experiences. So it's almost like the experiences that we have when we're like, you know, when we're 5 or when we're 10 or whatever. Those are very powerful and very beautiful. And like when you find somebody else that's had something like that, you have something. You share something rare. You know, I've seen that a lot with different groups, and it seems like a lot of the time, like the people that are there for more transactional reasons, they're either going to get what they're looking for or not. But they don't after they don't get what they're looking for, they're not patient enough to wait to see what happens. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. It's just observations, I guess.
Yeah, and kind of like a higher intuition sense that, okay, I'm here for a reason, and that reason will make itself clear, versus, you know, I can't see it right now with my eyes, therefore it doesn't exist. I mean, there's various levels within, and there's a yin and yang of the dark side of both of those situations that is popping to my mind. But it's, you know, like you can stay in a bad relationship with a group or a person thinking, well, this is where I am, therefore it's where I'm meant to be. And, you know, like, even though I'm not happy, like, that's not necessarily what I mean. But if, you know, like, I used to want, you know, I mean, I'm saying like a person could say, when I started on this path, it was because I wanted to master this. I wanted to have the ability to do this. I wanted to shoot fireballs, you know, out of my fingertips or whatever. And now, now I've realized that's not going to happen. But also, I don't want it anymore. And now I'm here, and I get along with half of these people, you know, and I don't know what I'm doing here, but it's fine, you know. So I'll guess I'll keep doing it, you know. I mean, I don't know why we're talking about. Well, Joe and I have that shared past experience of working in a temple environment, but I want to mention, partly because I want to give him a little bit of free advertising, but how is that? I mean, for people who are relatively new, there's the Golden Dawn system of magic, and there are orders that you can join, and you know, you pay a dues, and some of them are healthy, some of them are unhealthy, some of them are very unhealthy, and but then on the other hand, if you go and buy, you know, Regardi's Golden Dawn, it's very thick and very dense, and a lot of it you're like, what, huh? Why, you know? And then there's this idea called self-initiation. There's the self-initiation into the Golden Dawn tradition. I think something like that is the name of the book. And so a lot of people, you know, have taken that path and you've done it all themselves, made the tools themselves, and very diligently gone down that process. But I think there's a type of person who doesn't necessarily, who's curious, kind of wants to get involved in the current, or which is to say the the practice, the particular spiritual language and practice, but they don't want to join any of these groups, and they don't quite have the discipline or the patience or maybe the time or energy to spare to figure it all out on their own in order to go down the self-initiation path. And then there's Frater RC, who is not the chief adept of an order like I am, the Procrustean Order of the Limited Value International Trademark. Forget it. Member, there's only one member, it's me, but anyway. So he started out, he and I go way back. And he has impressed the fuck out of me since the day I met him in 1998 or 7 or whenever that was. And he's great. But he's not running a cult. He's not running an order. But what he is doing, in addition to Magic Without Fears and all of these classes and free things too, and Enochian. Hopefully it'll really catch on, this year or next year. I think it was online last year. Anyway,
last year was good, but yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's snowballing. It's definitely snowballing.
And so he's provided a service, or it's not free, but it's a service where to help people who want to take the self-initiation path to have the benefit of someone's decades of experience with working within an order, as well as his knowledge. Anyway, I'm doing all the talking. How is it? How is the Hermetic Mystery School's self-initiation course? It's good.
Yeah, it's good. I'd been kind of like chatting with Frater kind of almost since I first started listening to him. He probably thought I was a bit of a pest. But yeah, no, I mean, and then we were eventually ended up just kind of talking anyway. It's very interesting because basically I'm 2 days older than him, same year. So I'm January 29th, he's January 31st. So many, this, because I was sitting there listening to the podcast and he was like, oh, I was married to a Gemini and divorced. And I was like, hang on, I married and divorced a Gemini. And things like this, even down to things like the IBS and the gut issues and things like that. So anyway, so we'd kind of been corresponding, and so that's how I'd kind of ended up with because I think I'd ended up on his Heptarchia course because I'd sort of been again poking around Enochian but not really knowing, and he was like, that's the beauty of him, is that he's again, like you're saying, he's not dismissive of dabblers. He's kind of like, well, if you're gonna dabble right, kind of, in a way,
right.
So yeah, he just kind of I remember he just sent something to me and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And it's good. It's really good. It's you have workshops, you have a website, and kind of so you are still kind of initiating yourself, but like you're saying, you get just this immense insight and these resources, but you also get that best of both worlds, don't you? Because you get that actual yourself initiating, but you still feel part of kind of like a group, and there's a camaraderie. I mean, one of the other members of the class, Russ, or Frater, not Nineveh Shadrakar. Again, that's a conversation we had in the class. So Russ, he helped me with my motto, just to get the sort of Latin kind of spot on. One of the others has created a web game to help learn Hebrew. So it's kind of so again, we're all sort of helping each other, and yeah, it's so you do your own thing, but you come together. I mean, through his career, obviously RC has got a lot of connections and a lot of resources, so you kind of get the cream of the crop in a way. But again, it's not hemmed in to the point that you're kind of like, you feel that you're sort of bound to a curriculum or order. I mean, I joined with the autumn equinox class in October. And ideally the aim was that we were going to like test out of neophyte on solstice. Didn't quite happen. The other guys managed to test out of neophyte on the spring equinox. I'm hanging back, and again I had like lots of like, I felt so bad, and then like I couldn't talk to RC, and then one day I talked to him about it. He was like, dude, don't worry, like it's not a strict thing, you know. People take 8, it's more about the alchemy. He's more concerned about you actually feeling the process, living the process, and having that alchemy. And in a way, that's that beautiful thing, is that like earlier I was talking about how I was doing the self-initiation, but I was having the Arbatel say to me, come back to us, and you know, and I was worried. I was like, oh, but the Arbatel is almost like reading ahead, you know. But actually through the work that I'm doing with the Arbatel, I'm kind of just teaching myself a lot of those things on a deeper level. You know, I'm very much one of these kind of visual learners. And I, you know, and I learn more by doing and experiencing rather than reading or kind of blind repetition in a way. And so just through writing my own kind of take on the whole use of the circle in tarot magic, where you use the 12 zodiacal trumps, just through writing my own kind of take on that has been quite good, because that has just kind of ingrained the astrology a bit better, you know, a bit deeper for me. Again, I couldn't say I could like instantly recall it, but I could, you know, I could tell you how I've kind of taken the sequence of the zodiacal trumps and tied it to the like the Poimandres, like the cosmogenesis of the Poimandres. So in a way, that's kind of like helped sink that into my sort of understanding. You know, so you start with Aries, the Emperor's the Noose, and then you go all the way down to is it Pisces? And that kind of, yeah, I've sort of staggered that out. So each trump, and again, it was weird because like it was almost like, has someone already done this? Because like it would be really good if the next card is this, because that would tie into, say, the cosmic anthropos, and it's like, oh, the next card is, you know, Sagittarius, so you could kind of go Sagittarius, Orion, cosmic anthropos, kind of things like that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that my interpretation is like something amazingly spot on or correct, but it's just kind of helped me understand several things at once in a way. That again, that kind of holographic thing, it's like, okay, so through looking at that through the lens of the Poimandres, I kind of now understand, you know, Theurgy a bit more. I now understand astrology a bit more. I now understand so many things a little bit more.
So what you're doing is what you're doing is one of the core skill. It's like a core Golden Dawn skill that isn't acknowledged so much. So like usually in different schools will just have like different things, right? So like you have like in an initiatory school, you have a series of initiations, and you have like all the alchemy that goes along with that. And by the way, while you're going through all these things, you also have these various skills that are being developed, right? So like, you know, a lot of the time, like people go through neophyte, and then they're learning things like the Hebrew alphabet, and they're learning things like how to do a tarot spread, and just things like that. And you go along and you pick up more skills as you go, and then hopefully by the end of it,
teaching.
Yeah. Well, by the end of it, when you're in like the latter stages of Portal, then you have like the equivalent of like probably like a bachelor's degree in like occult arts at that point, right? But there's like a skill that doesn't usually have like any development throughout that whole process, and suddenly not at the end, when you're ready to begin, like when you're ready to begin like the really advanced stuff, you find out that there's a skill that like you had that you may or may not have picked up yet, and it's how to take a pile of material and turn it into something workable. And how to take a completely new symbol system and discover what that symbol system is. Basically, how to take just like a pile of stuff and turn it into something workable. And so a lot of the time, like people will get like stuck in certain grades because they like get all in on like something like the Arbatel or some other thing, right? And that process of synthesizing all that material is like core. You need it, and if you don't have it, then later on you're going to be like, because a lot of the time what happens is like once you get to something like adept, then you get this like these volumes of material with no context. And part of your like part of the adept oath is like that you will work through this unaided. Like the reason that part of working through something unaided, the rest of the school should have taught you how to do this in an aided way. And if you didn't do it yet, then you're like, well, I don't really know how to do this. So like, don't feel bad if you feel like you're stuck. You're picking up skills that are going to be super handy later.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I'd sort of, after kind of having, I mean, I kind of resolved it in my head that way, that it was like, it's fine, I'm kind of the tortoise. But then to kind of just finally sort of bite the bullet and talk to RC about it, and for him to go, dude, it's the alchemy, don't worry about it, you know, do it, live it, it's the process. Like, you know, I think that's one of the things that he says that he wishes he did, you know, was that he kind of like, he sometimes talks about how he feels like he rushed through in a way and missed lots. But again, for him, he says that's the beauty of doing this course, is that he is kind of like, every time he does like, and I know it's very much part of kind of what you guys have spoken about before, but like, you know, he kind of goes right back to neophyte, like and not just in the sense of like rereading his journals, but he'll be like, you know what, I'm going to actually like do some of the things that I've asked you guys to do. Like he in the run up to, you know, Zelator and Earth, like he started getting into kind of simple things like houseplants. He was like, I'm going to do houseplants, you know. And so it's you know, it's I hope I'm allowed to have said that. I mean, I did say, are there things that I'm not allowed to say? You didn't get back. No, I'm you know, there are things I could maybe have said and I haven't. But yeah, no, just and again, it's the beauty of the course. It's the beauty of him as a teacher, like, you know, and it's the beauty of the curriculum, because I think, although it might not necessarily be like, you know, it might not necessarily be a spoken thing, but it does seem to be something that is core to the order, you know, or how I think of the order. Like, you know, I kind of think of other systems as very much sort of that kind of like speedy kind of acquisition of names and you know, offices and things like that. And it's just kind of like, again, that has never kind of really appealed to me. It's been about that slow and steady, you know, wise old Merlin in his cottage kind of thing.
I don't know any. So I've known plenty of people that have like gone through their grades quickly. I don't know anybody who has said like, man, I'm so glad that I went through that fast. You know what I mean? Like anybody who's gone through it fast is always like, I should have savored that. I should have enjoyed that process. Not only because I mean it's an enjoyable like when you're in the current, like it's an enjoyable process, and later on, like you're gonna have down times, and so like if you're in a good time, like enjoy the good time. Yeah, but like there's been so many people who have been like, I should have enjoyed it more. Like, I feel like it just goes back to this idea of like enjoy your life. You know what I mean? Like you're only going to get to wake up and go to sleep as a neophyte for so long, and then you're going to be a zealotor. So you're going to move on, you know, and then you're not going to get to go back to neophyte stuff until you're teaching neophyte stuff. If you get there,
yeah.
And I suppose it ties into that whole residency thing as well, doesn't it? You know, because you know you're working with the current, you're introduced to certain god forms, so to actually kind of like, I mean, because I've found, one of the things that I'm sort of doing with the tarot magic side of it is I'm using the Princess of Cups as sort of a proxy. So, for example, when you're doing like a planetary hour, so you have Saturn of Saturn, you can't have Saturn in two places on the circle. You know, you can't place the world trump twice on the zodiacal circle. But the where the second placement of, say, Saturn, it always falls under the auspice of, I think, the Princess of Cups. And they're either on Scorpio or Sagittarius. So what I do is when I do, say, Saturn of Saturn, I will have, Saturn in its specific planetary modifier. And then I'll put the Princess of Cups in the other one, which is normally, like I say, either Sagittarius or Scorpio. Scorpio? So in a way, she's kind of taken on a role very similar to, well, it kind of struck me with the way we were sort of introduced to, again, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. Oh, blimey. Maybe I am because I've forgotten. I've forgotten her name. Mart. Yeah. Just this kind of like guardian. And it's weird because the function of her, and particularly other sort of female kind of god forms, is very similar to how, because kind of through working with the Arbatel, I sort of started listening to a lot of Greek myths and reading a lot of Greek myths. And I've noticed that, like, you know, it was just interesting because one day I was thinking, like, you know, so for example, like, Hecate has a torch. But why does Hecate have a torch? And then you're sort of listening to the Odyssey, and you keep hearing about how these, like, there are always these handmaidens, and they're escorting people from room to room or building to building or person to person, and they're always escorting them by torchlight. And I just kind of was thinking about, sort of this kind of ubiquitous feminine psychopomp in a way, and how, in a way, sort of, again, from what I can sort of understand, the way we were introduced to Mart in the GD system is she's very much that kind of by your side psychopomp guardian. So that's kind of informed the way that I'm using the Princess of Cups within that system.
So you're working with the Princess of Cups as sort of a stand-in for a few other.
Yeah, because like
the way that you're working with similar to like there's this, you're seeing this connection like between Ma'at and Hecate in a way, because they're both female psychopomps.
Well, and also the torchbearer in the rites of Eleusis was the Didahos, and in the in the Golden Dawn, Neophyte at Zelator, the Dadaha is the incense bearer. I don't know if this is something that was an inspiration or if it's something that comes from a teaching, but I've heard of the Dadaha and Stylistes referred to as the wings of Ma'at. So in that sense, the Dadaha would be her left hand, assuming she's facing west.
I feel like that's deep in that's deep in the lore, but it's lore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she does have a torch in that sense.
Because in a way I've sort of amalgamated kind of, because there's another goddess in kind of Greek mythology who has a very similar role. And this was something I sort of picked up listening to P.D. Newman talking about his book. Where are we? Another quick Theurgy 3 patches. That's quite a good one. He was talking about Hestia and how in the zodiacal round you have all the gods in the chain behind Zeus, just going round and round and round, except for Hestia. She stands there holding a mixing bowl, a crater, a cup, you know. And I was like, okay, so, and what happens? And so I was kind of like, okay, she's stationary, so she's not necessarily omnipresent in the sense that Hecate is almost everywhere in a way. But she's kind of ubiquitous and omnipresent in the way that I can't remember what is something to do with the mythology behind her, but like she's an eternal virgin. She's welcome in every house. That's probably why she never really turns up in a lot of mythology, because they're always having like, you know, drama with each other.
Right.
And she's always the one who kind of, again, that kind of just seemed to tie into that whole idea of the way Mart's been presented at this early level again. So yeah, I've kind of like so where, and in a way that's where the kind of book has sort of necessitated itself, because I've taken like Tyson's idea, but I've put my own kind of Greek mythological lens to perceive it through. So you've got, well, I suppose a Hermetic sense as well, because obviously, you know, I was using the Poimandres, but I'm also using like, things from like Neoplatonism. But again, it's all things that are kind of conducive to the Arbatel. But it also, like we're sort of saying, and it's something that RC was saying a lot with the self-initiation, is that even though they may not have actually intended it, like the GD is like so hermetic. Like the more hermetic research and archaeology is done, and the more that discoveries are made and things are translated, it makes you think that there's something, you know, without wanting to sound a bit crazy, it makes you think that there's a God, you know, because by unraveling things, you find that by accident, some Masons in the late 19th century have kind of almost accurately represented practices that they didn't necessarily know about, you know, just through the piecemeal that they had at the time. So that in itself is kind of a fascinating thing. But yeah, to actually kind of be in and work with it.
I had one teacher, and of course, you know, I'll just say ICO. And I don't think he'll mind if I share. He was a correspondence member. In other words, he was away. He was serving, and so he wasn't able to be near a temple for the first few years. And so he was kind of doing it on his own, and he was taking the scrying sessions very seriously, and working with the planets and writing in a journal and all this. And then the thing that kind of solidified him in sort of a faith or knowledge of the Golden Dawn as a as a good system was that later things would be revealed, or he'd go through an initiation and someone would tell him something that he literally wrote down in his journal a year ago when he was scrying that, like, and he thought it was just something that was coming directly from his own higher self. And no, it's actually the teachings. He was getting teachings from next year or 2 years from now early.
Wow.
And so yeah, that's it's mind blowing when that happens, or when it, it's like, where did they get this? And then someone digs something up, and it's like, oh well, I don't know, but they said it, 5,000 years ago. Oh well, that's interesting,
It is though, isn't it? It's just like, I don't know. It's like the ultimate video game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you kind of show my age with those kind of metaphors, don't I? Yeah, because that was something I sort of struggled to kind of convey to RC. I was talking about how, like, you could use, Tyson's portable magic was like a game engine, and you had the bare bones of how to use the zodiacal circle, the aces for your altar, and things like that. And then, like, so yeah, you could have a crack at trying to do Enochian and kind of get a bit like bamboozled like me, or you could have a go at, say, the Arbatel, or I just kind of think that I've lost my way. No, yeah, you could perhaps. It's a game. The metaphor of a game engine, because like you have the Unreal Engine, don't you? But then they come in and they'll play. Someone will come in and make an FPS out of it. Someone will come in and make a RPG, and but it's still that same kind of component. And I can't remember.
That's a really interesting metaphor about how, like, he's giving you this like base. He's giving you like this base system of guidance, right? And then from there, like, you can build it out however you want to build it out. It's Donald Tyson. It's called Portable Magic. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. It's somewhere here. I'll probably.
I had never heard of it before either.
No, I know. I again, it's a massive puzzle to me how I actually happened on it. I just remember. I mean, yeah. But I just remember one day kind of going, oh, I'll go, again, like looking back at my journal, quick one drop again. I just remember looking at my journal. I had it, and then I obviously read it, and then I'd been doing sort of the exercises as Tyson gives them to you, and then I kind of like I was saying earlier, you sort of reach the end of the book, and he kind of gives you carte blanche in a way, because he kind of goes, well, these are the sort of GD correspondences to things, and this is how you could kind of use it to do a sort of GD way, but I've got my own correspondences, so this is how I've tweaked it to do my own system. And I was like, well, I'm not quite vain enough to say I'm going to do my own system, but I'm going to have a crack at seeing how to translate a pre-existing system like Enochian through that game engine, as it were. And then you make adorable little Enochian tablets.
But I mean, like portability is like really so important, especially for lodge magicians, because there's so actual magical lodges are kind of few and far between, right? And even if you do live near a vault, or you just live near a magical lodge, you're not always going to be there. You're going to be traveling like all the time. You also live in a house. Usually you don't live in a lodge. Some people do, but not everybody does. And so for that, like there's some portability is useful, especially if you want, if you want magic to be part of your life, then it needs to be able to fit into your life.
Yeah.
I mean, the other option, like I said, is making your life fit into the lodge. So that's at that point, like you just have a sleeping bag and you're just sleeping in the lodge, which is fun, but yeah, but it's not really a long-term, it's not really a good long-term thing. Edward, do you want to talk about times when people have done that?
Well, I mean, RC would probably like to share his own stories about when he lived at a temple. But I did my time where basically what happened was I was living in my house, it was my grandma's house. She was very old. I was taking care of my grandma, but then we had someone taking care of her 6 days a week. And I was Hierophant, and I was teaching on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then we had mandatory meetings on Sundays. So, and where I lived was 45 minutes drive without traffic from the temple. So it just sort of made sense for me to live at the temple 6 days a week. And I remember my sister was insisting that I get a job because, I was at that age where you should have a job, 22 or 23, something like that. So I got a job right next to the temple at Cost Plus in the Ontario Mills Mall. And so, yeah, I kind of like my life revolved around the temple for a period of time, for sure. And man, this stuff happened. Aside from watching that VHS copy of Snatch well over 50 times, it was Snatch, Jesus of Nazareth, Peter and Paul, or the Mother Teresa documentary. Those were my options. So, I watched Snatch a lot. I just watched it again recently, but anyway, it's a good movie. It's very rewatchable. But yeah, aside from that, yeah, gosh, and I was broke as fuck, and I remember one time that there was a truck stop next door to the temple. Yeah, it was a warehouse, industrial warehouse, bunch of industrial warehouses. There was this. I don't know if exactly where in Africa they were from. We assumed they were Nigerian, I think. We called them the Nigerians. I don't know if they were Nigerians, but they were a cult, very, very Christian, very loud cult, and they had the space next to ours. I mean, I think that whoever was running this industrial warehouse space had a twisted sense of humor, or they were just like, for their own reasons, they were like, okay, let's put these people over on this side, just right next to each other. And of course, Saturday was our big night for, doing our initiations, and Saturday was their big night for doing their things. And so there was a period of time where we were having to shout over the shouting neighbors, and that was quite a thing. But yeah, so there was one night I went over to Taco Bell at the truck stop, and I got a water. I was like, can I have a water? And they gave me a little cup, and they were like, yeah, it's the little tab on the soda fountain. And so I go over and I look over my shoulder and I start filling it up with Mountain Dew, and the guy shouts and embarrasses me in front of the whole room full of truckers, and yeah, it was an interesting time. I mean, I don't know, I have stories within stories about that time, but I don't know if it goes anywhere necessarily. It did eventually end when somebody offered me a job. Somebody had some connection to the industry, the entertainment industry, got me a job working for one of the unions. And so then it made sense for me to move back to where I lived. So that was the end. I wasn't a Hierophant anymore. So, but yeah, I did my time, and there were definitely others who did their time. And I'd say I don't think it's up to me to share those stories about other people's trials and tribulations of living at the temple. But yeah, there's upsides and downsides. Like, I mean, it's amazing how quickly you go from thinking, wow, if I lived there, then any time I could just wake up, I could just get up at 1 a.m., go in and light the candles, light the incense, and do a full-on invocation all by myself in this room. But then you're like, yeah, but I could do that tomorrow. And then you just don't. And then you watch Snatch again, you know?
Yeah,
So
and I think, wasn't it, RC was saying that actually, like, you know, if the toilet bursts, you're the one who's cleaning it.
right, yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. Have you seen The Gentleman? It's a couple of films after Guy Ritchie's Snatch.
No, I haven't.
That's a good one. That's a
Okay.
really good one. Yeah. There's yeah, no, I think you'll like it. It's about, well, yeah.
I'll check it out. Yeah, for
No,
sure.
definitely. It's I mean, yeah, I mean, I could say what happens, but it would kind
No,
of
I
spoil it,
understand. Yeah.
you know.
I understand. Sometimes
But
even just saying a little bit spoils too
yeah.
much. Yeah.
It's of that milieu. It's of a very similar milieu to, you know, Lock, Stock and Snatch.
I still haven't seen Lock, Stock. It's just
Lock, Stock's quite good, actually.
all right.
You know,
I'll have
I mean,
to check it out. Yeah.
because you know, it's, I think whenever you look at like an early filmmaker's kind of work, you know, you I think, you know, you always see something new and different, don't you? That
Yeah.
it's like when you I remember, oh, what was it? Oh, years ago when DVD first came out, and I got showed Desperado, and then someone, the guy who showed me El Mariachi, and then on the back of El Mariachi you had Robert Rodriguez's film school, and it was basically like a 10-20 minute self-film documentary of him telling you how he made El Mariachi and how you can make any film you want. And then I'd completely forgotten about that, and then I was watching the Book of Boba Fett. And everyone's like, oh my god, this is terrible, this is the worst thing ever. And I'm like, if you watch Robert Rodriguez's documentary on film school, he is literally gonzo. Like, you know, he's gone back to his like gonzo poverty student days of filmmaking, and that's why the Book of Boba Fett is the way it is. Like, you know.
Oh, okay. Huh.
But I've still yet to watch, is it the last 2 episodes of that? But yeah, I kind of I enjoyed it because I was like, I wasn't expecting anything too intellectually demanding.
Right. I switched over to 7-year-old me, you know, and just kind of was like, oh, cool. Hey, those bikes are cool.
Yeah.
I want
it's like,
one.
oh, you're doing June. You're doing June. You've done June with Boba Fett.
Right.
You know. Yeah. But I think that was probably the last sort of Disney Star Wars thing, because after that I was like, yeah, I'm you know.
Yeah. I do love Andor. I know RC and I disagree about that one. But,
I know. Apparently Andor is like, you know, because I keep forgetting about what's the name of Alan Tudyk's android? Him. Because Rogue One is just astounding.
Oh, Rogue One. So, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I'm watching, you know, they just came out with the first 3 episodes of season 2 of Andor, so it's a very exciting time.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Oh yeah, it's worth it. I mean, you got to get Disney Plus, but other than that, it's you know,
yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Gosh. Well, let's see. What can you tell us? Spoilers from your upcoming book that's still in the astral.
I mean, it's still very much kind of like, so I'm sort of just kind of like,
if you were to write a book,
I mean, I think I will definitely put it down in a book.
Yeah.
Like I say, I want to kind of give some, you know, I think where people do like a thanks page and it's a single paragraph, like I would probably have like a sort of chapter of thanks, but then that's where that idea of a sort of slightly more modernized chapter about the GD was like, because there's actually a lot of people in the GD I thank, so actually maybe I'd just do like a you know, everyone always does like the creation up until, say, I don't know, just before Friday Ra and things like that. And I was just kind of like, well, you know, you could read that history anywhere. And I think people need to kind of hear more about the fact that there are, you know, online schools and podcasts, and there are still temples, and there are still reputable orders and reputable order heads, and you know, and to stay away from...
There's reputable people in shady orders too.
Yeah.
There's really sincere you know, devotees of the Golden Dawn system of magic that find themselves in groups, you know, and find themselves in morally compromising situations. It's sort of like being a high-ranking member of a military of a corrupt, you know, country or something like that, and you're doing your best to honor the oath you took and to live by your values, and sometimes that means saying no to the people above you, and then you get kicked out, and then people cast a light on you like you're some kind of villain or something. And it's I've seen people go through journeys like that again and again, and you know, was quite happy to shake off the brainwashing and get outside of that particular organization and just see that they're fine. They're just doing fine, you know, and a lot of my old friends that you know, that there was a time we weren't supposed to talk to people who had left if they were adepts and then they left and they weren't getting along, you know, then we weren't supposed to talk to them. And so after, you know, even Joe, after 20 years of not speaking to like one of my best friends, you know, like getting back in touch, and then now he comes on and helps me with Esoterinerd, and there were so many others that have come on as guests and things like that. And so that's kind of where, like, I mean, not everybody, it's not necessarily obvious to everybody all of the drawbacks of groups. And again, there are groups, I mean, it seems like when I hear about groups that don't have these kinds of cultic dramas, and it's like, okay, well, what do you have? And it's like, well, twice a year we have a Zoom call, and it's kind of like, oh, all right. So there's no wonder there's no drama. There's no current, you know, like, or there, you know, I'm not.
Sometimes the reason why there's no drama is because there's nothing happening at all. But sometimes there's no drama because like emotionally mature people have been selected to do the work, you know.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. I mean, I'd like to think that. I've never witnessed it personally.
I could think of like orders where like they just do fine. Like they're not like they're not expanding the envelope of occultism, and they're not completely silent either. They're fine. And, you know.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
There's ups and downs to having some kind of megalomaniac used car salesman at the helm, you know.
There's ups and downs, you know.
Yeah. Because you and I definitely had some experiences that most other people in Golden Dawn communities will never have. But also we had some very negative experiences that they also will never have. But
yeah. It's an interesting thing. And it just becomes a question of like, well, what do you want?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know, what's your focus? Like, what are you here for? You know? I swear I've met people before who have been involved in like, they've been involved in these like cult-like experiences. But they wanted the cult-like experience because it meant that they didn't have to make decisions about, something traumatizing happened to them and they didn't have to make decisions about that stuff. They could just like put their head down and have somebody else tell them, you're going to really help the world if you do this thing. And they're just like, okay. And then,
Yeah.
Now they don't have to make decisions. Now they can listen to the Generalissimo and they can do whatever they say.
What's that? I don't know if you guys are into Devo. Freedom of choice is what you've got. Freedom from choice is what you want. Oh.
I'm sure that's made me think of the Illuminatus trilogy. There's a similar quote in Illuminatus trilogy, but I probably take 10 minutes to find it, so I won't.
Oh,
but it's about how we it's that whole kind of joke of how we actually crave subjugation, and
Oh yeah. Well, who wrote Illuminatus? Was it Robert Anton Wilson?
Yes, yeah, and
he's a vibe. He's like, it's hard to describe. Like there's some authors and there's some people. So like there's some people you meet and there's some authors that you write or that you read that are they're like the prototype of some sort of culture all to themselves. You know what I mean? Yeah. And Robert, he was definitely one of those.
His is definitely a very interesting legacy, isn't it? Because I kind of got into him through sort of like Chaos Magic and that whole kind of Matrix milieu, finishing work on a Saturday, going down to the internet cafe, going to barbalif.com and like link hopping from the Golden Dawn to Robert Anton Wilson to Timothy Leary.
Speaking.
But I mean, his is a very interesting legacy, Wilson. Like he's kind of like, he's been picked up by both sides in a way, hasn't he?
Was he the one that wrote that like giant tome and it had a black cover, and I think it was just called Occultism? Am I thinking of the right one?
No, that's Colin Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Colin Wilson is he's the one who he was involved with what was it, the Hayes Necronomicon, wasn't it, where they translated Liber Lagar and it just happened to be the Necronomicon or something. Colin Wilson was Robert Anton Wilson is kind of the reason I was sort of awkwardly standing near Alan Moore and got schooled.
Oh, cool.
Because there was a play called Cosmic Trigger about Robert Anton Wilson's life, about the Cosmic Trigger books. And I kind of crowdfunded it. It was done by Daisy Campbell, Ken Campbell's daughter. Ken Campbell did the original 12-hour Illuminatus trilogy theatre performance. Her name's Daisy Eris. So basically the play was crowdfunded, and Alan basically cameoed as Fuck Up, but he also is it Malacapolypse the Younger? When they do there's a black mass and basically supposedly Satan turns up, but it's not. It's Malacapolypse the Younger, and Alan Moore was him as well. So basically, the show had its original run, and then they did a second run, and then to thank everyone who kind of crowdfunded the first run, there was like a sort of finale performance, and so Alan Moore was there. I was sitting behind one half of KLF, the 90s anarchic.
Oh yeah.
Group.
Yeah.
The guys, they burnt £1 million, and they did Justified Ancients of Moo, stuff like that. So and then who else was there? Oh, obviously Melinda was there, Alan's wife. She's lovely. Melinda Gibby was lovely. I mean, Alan was lovely as well. I did that whole John Higgs, crikey. Again, because I'm a visual learner, so if you showed me pictures of these celebrities' faces, I'd be like, yeah, that person. But I wouldn't listen. Yeah, but I mean, that was fun. Oh, Alan Watts, we had during the break in the show, they had Alan Watts puppet.
Oh, how fun!
That was so much fun. Because who else was there? Oh, I forget her name, but she's she's a famous puppeteer, and she's the daughter of a British comedian. No, it's gone. But she was there. I mean, there was loads of things. Yeah. They made like there was like a wall display where they did like because Robert Anton Wilson would kind of talk about the different sides of his personality, wouldn't he? Through his what's it called? The 8-circuit model, Leary's 8-circuit model. So he would talk about the writer, the mystic, the skeptic, and they had this lovely sort of tarot deck, and each card was like a sort of portrait of one of those sort of aspects of Robert's personality. It was nice. It was in a sort of like a lovely little cozy avant-garde theatre in London that, like, you know.
That sounds nice.
It was
that's fabulous. How long was that run? Was it just, did they do the one?
Oh, blimey. So I think the original run was in like 20, it was like in sort of like, you know, winter season. So I think it ran from like 2015 to 2016. And then the second one was just in, I think that was more spring summer. So that was, yeah, because it was spring 2017. Yeah, around that time. Because I for some reason, I rushed home rather than staying for the all-night party, and then I basically ended up having a motorbike accident. I was like,
oh no.
Silly me. Should have chosen to just, you know, awkwardly stand next to Alan Moore rather than. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't anything too bad. It was.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, no, I grew up on a farm, so I'd basically been riding a motorbike since I was like 6. And then at like, what was it? Crikey. 36, I had my first proper road bike. And yeah. it was a completely silly mistake, because I came to a like country lane and it was a chicane, and rather than, you know, leaning into the corner and, you know, pushing through, I was like, I'll slow down for the corner. You don't slow down on a sharp corner, because you'll hit the corner and you'll, you know. Yeah. No, I literally scraped my knee and kind of, I mean, it was a bit of a junker motorcycle anyway. So, but yeah, after that, I was not much longer on the bike. Because there's a difference between, you know, bombing around a farm, doing time trials and laps, like, you know, with your mates, and then actually getting out on the road and sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you're the best in the world, you can't trust the people around you. The other people on the road.
Yeah, I mean,
who's drunk, you know.
I mean, that was kind of the beauty of where I was, or where I am, is that it's a lot of country lanes. Like, I could take a 5-minute main road, like where I was working in a care home. It was like 5 minutes on the bike if I took the main roads. But so I would do that in the morning. I'd get there in 5 minutes, but in the, you know, if I'd finish at 6, I wouldn't be home till 8, because I'd just be like, I'm going to go across 3, you know, I'm going to dip into Kent and go around some country lanes and find a garden centre and have a cup of tea, and then, you know, come home. Anything to avoid roundabouts. I could never understand roundabouts. And I'm on this, like, you know, I've got L plates and I've got this little lawnmower thing, and, you know, I lost count of the amount of times I stalled on roundabouts. Oh, embarrassing. Anyway.
What part of the world do you live in now?
So I'm in southeast England. I'm in East Grinstead. So I'm just down the road from St Hill. So we've got Forest Row as well. So that's quite a strong anthroposophical community. This kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier. Like, in a way, I'm kind of surrounded by, like, kind of like kooky, out of the ordinary kind of occult sort of points of view and people. But yeah, I you know, because I sort of reached out to kind of the local Masons and stuff, and they're like, we're not really, we're more of a sort of a practical lodge, and I'm sort of like, oh, okay, I'm very interested in the, you know, But that's cool because again, you know, I've got this thing with the Arbatel that scratches that itch, and for that feeling of kind of actually feeling that I'm kind of part of something. Because I think that was kind of part of the decision of sort of years of being sort of solitary and kind of chaos magic and all that edgelord nonsense and whatever. I was like, yeah, you know, I don't want to be affiliated. I want to be, you know, individual, sacrosanct and alone. And then I just reached the point where I was like, no, I want to actually, like, you know, at first I thought it was because I wanted that sort of like formality of a recognized body. But then I've kind of realized that it's not. It's about, you know, losing yourself in something and contributing to something greater that is an ongoing process that will, like, even if you're not, you know, like directly touching and teaching people's lives,
right? Yeah,
touching people's lives and teaching them, you're still kind of part of this just thing, you know. So yeah, like Ed was saying when he was trying to sort of introduce RC's kind of self-initiation, it's like that beautiful balance between feeling part of something greater but also retaining a certain level of sovereignty, I suppose.
right.
Yeah, so I mean it's beautiful country around here. I think that's why we have the kind of like amalgamation of sort of like so many different points of view. The ley lines converge on the forest, up on Ashdown Forest, which in itself is the inspiration for the 100-Acre Wood from Winnie the Pooh. Arthur Conan Doyle stayed in a hotel in Forest Row to write some Sherlock stories. Who else? Oh, C.S. Lewis, and who's the other guy? J.R. Tolkien used to go down to Forest Row because there was again, off the top of my head, I can't remember his name, but there was an anthroposophical guy. He was in their little circle, and he apparently he was quite a big influence on their kind of interpretation of things. You know, obviously because C.S. Lewis was very kind of Anglican Christian, and then Tolkien was kind of sort of that sort of Nordic European fantasy milieu. But yeah, I mean, I lived in Forest Row briefly. That was fun. So I got to sort of pick up some Steiner books. Some of them were a bit heavy for me at the time, but I found because I sort of lived 2 towns away, and I was raised in a completely different town 2 towns away, and then I sort of moved to the area, and I remember when I sort of first came to the area, it was very much like in Stardust. You know when is it Tristan crosses the wall? You know, he lives in the kind of normal mundane village. Guyman Stardust. You know, he's a local lad, but he's a bit touchy at the minute.
I don't know the reference, but
yeah.
But please go on. I mean,
yeah, we'll Google it later, but yeah, you can finish what you were saying.
So there's a story of his called Stardust, and basically there's a thing called the Wall. He lives on the village that's on the edge of the wall, and the wall is kind of the boundary between the mundane realm and the fairy realm.
It sounds familiar. I don't know why it sounds familiar, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it felt like coming from Hawley to East Grinstead. There was a certain point, because I used to come over in my friend's car. We used to just come to the pub because it was kind of a bit more, you know, it was more our sort of chilled vibe, you know. So, and I just remember this sensation of feeling like I was coming through some kind of actual physical barrier, like obviously not a visual physical, but just this change in ambience and energy. And that's what it kind of felt like coming to East Grinstead in this sort of area. But yeah, living in Forest Row was quite fun. Emerson College, named after Ralph Waldo Emerson, I think because he basically paid for it. And I remember I went there and I went up to their upstairs library, and they had like first edition Jung, first edition Freud, first edition Nietzsche. And I was like, oh my God, And I remember I went back a second time because I was like, I'm just going to sit in the library all day. Even if it's just like we were talking about earlier, just touching the books and being in their presence, because there's something about first editions. And I remember I opened the door and they were doing a Reiki class because it was at that time, it was a very like free form functional college. It was like, yeah, Reiki today will be in the library, but tomorrow it will be in the art room. So I kind of like, politely like said, oh, sorry. And I still hope to go back there and get back in that library. It was a lovely experience. And I've got like friends who are sort of like, they filter anthroposophy to me, just because sometimes, like I was saying, I've picked up a book of Steiner's and it's kind of like, I sort of get him up to a point and then I kind of go, maybe I'm lost.
I never really got into Rudolf Steiner. Sort of considered him peripherally a Rosicrucian cousin, but
yeah, I'm more into the sort of the way he's been presented to me through friends' interpretation of him. And
Gordon, one of my best friends and teachers, the way he explained Steiner seemed very interesting. I mean, I don't know how accurate it was, but he was talking about, instead of god forms for initiations, historical figures. I don't know how accurate that is. Because
again, I don't know if it's this. Is it this?
Oh, okay.
This talks about, it talks about figures of Rama, Krishna, Hermes, Pythagoras, and Plato. Like it talks about them as sort of real. I mean, on some level they were like real historical figures, but it talks about them as, it might have been that, I'm not sure.
So
something
there's a story about Steiner. Robert Felkin, when he was so Robert Felkin like led a version of the order, and then eventually moved to New Zealand, and that's where like the whole Wei Ra thing comes from. But when Felkin was, what basically happened with Felkin was he decided that he was going to try to recontact the Third Order, right? And he claimed to have done so like fairly easily. He was like, okay, now we have a Third Order again, hooray! And they just like kind of moved on from it. But his Third Order contacts put him in contact with Steiner. So Felkin like met Rudolf Steiner, and he was like the story goes that like within 15 minutes he was like whatever Steiner's into, he's really into it, and he's very important for this time. And so Steiner does have this he was recognized by the Golden Dawn of his time as being like a very established Rosicrucian and somebody that everybody could learn from. But it didn't, as far as I know, it didn't really like go further than that. Although I'm guessing, I would love to learn more about this, but like, because I'm guessing that, so Steiner had a magical school. Felkin had a magical school, and they weren't all that far from each other. I'm guessing that there were people who were educated by both Felkin and Steiner. But
I think I've heard that. Yeah.
I've never heard anything about it from there. Like I've never heard of any connections or anything. Have you?
I mean, where I have tried to sort of kind of mention certain things like that, and I don't think it's something that sort of like RC has kind of talk about. There's this sort of hesitancy to kind of associate, like, because Steiner like kind of disavowed certain things in a way, I think. So some people are sort of very kind of hesitant to kind of even.
I don't remember exactly what the controversy is, but I know there's some something that I've seen or something that somebody published. I forget whether it was said he was a horrible racist, or I forget. I mean, I don't want to like say things
No. I
and have
mean,
them be.
he definitely got into the whole root race thing and sort of things like that. But
Right.
I mean, his thing at the minute, not at the minute, but from what I understand from a friend of mine, is that he's more about that there's a Russian epoch coming or something like that. Yeah, I mean, he's a very interesting lens to look at things, but again, I wouldn't necessarily like take him wholesale.
Right.
And I don't think in a way he wanted necessarily to be taken wholesale. I think that was something that kind of maybe came afterwards, you know. Yeah. Like I say, because I sort of get a lot of it through others, or I sort of.
Right. Yeah. I used to get a lot of it through others, and then now I've gone off to India, and so I'm completely outside of anything where I used to absorb things through osmosis. And so that, you know, they talk about brain drain and corporations. I've got brain drain in my brain, you know, my actual brain. It's like, I used to know this, or I used to know half of it, and I could say, hey, Fred, what was that? Oh, right, here it is. But now it's just, it sounds familiar, but I don't know. You know? But I don't know. I chose it intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, because I, as well as sort of like working on this Arbatel thing, I was sort of like, I'm kind of doing a sort of Conan fanfic in a way, you know, like about the god Crom, and where kind of Crom comes from, and sort of like, because there's like Lovecraft mentions Crom, like, you know, those guys were sort of always sort of like doing like subtle winks to each other, and so I sort of wanted to do like a love child of those two authors. And I was going to use I was going to use Steiner's ideas about sort of like, you know, the Aramanic and the Luciferian, and I was sort of talking to a friend of mine about that, and he was kind of like, oh, you know, it's not something you can sort of do in a story. It's not like, you know, it's not toys for fiction. It's something very, and I was like, I know, but it's about putting it in a gloss so that it kind of is understood better. And but yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean,
I think that there's that fiction can, I mean, you could put everything from Homer to the Bible to everything else under fiction, you know. So I don't know. Like if you put a hard limit around fiction, or the idea of fiction, then you know, that's one thing, but it's not necessary to do that. Like, it's just because it's a common way of thinking doesn't necessarily mean you have to go along with it. I don't think, you know, you can do something in the guise of fiction, like what David Lynch did. Is that movies? Well, yes, you know, but also no, you know, like when you were talking about all those people that were hanging out in that region, the thing that came to my mind was how happy I was to go to that old Bob's Big Boy in Burbank, where he used to hang out. That's where he used to get all of his ideas. It's like having a burger and a shake, you know, sitting at this particular restaurant. And I was like, yeah, I used to go to that restaurant with my mom. She used to go to that restaurant with her dad. Like, I come from the same roots, sort of, kind of, as David Lynch. You know,
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, fiction, I'd say go for it. I'd say run with it, you know.
Poetry, it sounds awesome.
Fiction, whatever, you know, film, you know, whatever medium.
Yeah.
All the above, paint.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way I've kind of, again, that was sort of, it's weird because that was kind of how I kind of got back into magic at the end of lockdown, was that like, there's sort of, you know, there's like a narrative within a narrative, and one of the characters was kind of going to have like, you know, not quite the Lovecraftian sort of, oh, they go mad and blah 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 blah, you know, and they end up like, you know, disappearing into ellipses or whatever. It was going to be that they were going to have like a magical awakening. Like I was going to sort of flip that whole kind of Lovecraftian thing of like initiation being so traumatic that you go mad and die. I was going to have like it would be, you know, I wanted to do it different, and I was like, well, why don't I go back into magic and kind of therefore experience it and therefore be able to write it from a realistic perspective.
Research.
Yeah. And it's like, and it's quite
like,
funny because actually
that's so available. It's so available, and I've never seen anybody do it before.
Yeah.
It seems like such an obvious move. Like, oh, you want to write about, if you want to write about historical European magic, we'll just go find people who are into this kind of thing and then do it yourself and then find out what that's like and go write about it.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that really I haven't really touched the story since.
Well, it may have, that may have been to bring you back into magic. It was like, now that you're living it, no need to write about it.
Yeah.
Or maybe write about it later, or however.
I mean, the beautiful thing is that I do have, where I have had stuff that I've written before, and again where it's narratives and narratives. I do have a wonderful artist, Nick. Hi, Nick. He is amazing. He's done, I don't know if I've got any of it to hand, but like he just does this, like he'll take like where I've done like a simple paragraph of an action scene and I'm like, it's a bit bare bones, there's not much to it. And then he'll kind of like show me this, like, what was it? There's, because it's all to do with like the you know, Howard's like proto races, like the Hyborians and the I can't remember, the Stygians and things like that. And basically Crom from the Sumerians, like they're like, the idea is the Sumerians were Atlantean and there's a deluge and they kind of like regress to like cave people, and so they're kind of viewed as like, you know, at the time it was going to be sort of a very much a metaphor of kind of the political climate at the time, which may have come around again. So they were going to kind of be viewed as subhuman and lesser and unworthy and blah, 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 blah. And then through Crom, like, again, it was a very sort of simple kind of like, Crom is going to kind of be a bit like Christ kind of thing. And that was just a sort of simple idea of it. And Nick did this wonderful, like, there's a scene where basically all I'd written is Crom stayed for 7 harvests or something like that. And he just did this beautiful piece of this like half barbarian Christ-like figure carrying a scythe and a bundle of hay. And I was just like, wow, okay. I think the picture is going to carry more of the story than the prose. So yeah, I mean, it's not completely 100% abandoned, but yeah, it's just funny.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I ended up coming back into magic. Yeah.
How fun.
Yes, Angel. Oh. There you go, Angel. Yeah. So, so going back to the book, the
Yes.
Arbatel book, I do, you know, it is that is kind of something that is definitely an active sort of project. Like I have like an idea for a name, I have an idea for cover art. I kind of wanted to, it sounds silly, I just kind of wanted to do like a play on because when I was quite young, I was very into punk, like, you know, like 70s British punk and stuff. So I went to like a Pistols reunion at Finsbury Park. That was fun. That was an experience. Seeing Iggy Pop in see-through trousers and so I was thinking, like, so the Sex Pistols had like never mind the bollocks, here's the Sex Pistols. And I was going to have something like, never mind the Beelzebub, here's the Summum Sapientiae, or something like that. And kind of do that sort of, but again, I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, it's at the minute, it's just sort of a pet project, you know. No one's asked me to, you know, if they can publish it or if they can do it. I mean, I wouldn't even know. I'm just kind of sitting here doing my thing and writing my notes. So yeah, I mean, I've got like, you know, I've got like chapters on, say, for example, how the Princess of Discs is that kind of psychopomp. I've got a chapter about how, I mean, I could be wrong, but it feels like, you know, every grimoire kind of has a spirit attached to it. And through, like, you know, working with that grimoire, you then develop, as well as the actual spirits of the grimoire, you also get like, so for example, with like the Keys of Solomon, you get the Holy Guardian Angel. In Martinism, you get the Le Bon Compagnon. And the thing that I noticed in sort of reading the Arbatel and rereading the Arbatel was that you have, there's always mention of one that will be given or one who will be given. And so I've kind of sort of, I'm looking into the idea that there might actually be, or you could use the Arbatel to have like a kind of companion spirit, as well as the actual spirits of the Arbatel. Yeah.
That's
so that
deep Arbatel right there. Yeah. That's great.
I mean, hold on. Yeah, I'll let you quickly take the jacket off. Oh, you want the jacket on?
She looks bored. Is she bored?
No, she's kind of in and out and with her mum, and she's just bringing me little toys to dress and undress.
Okay.
So yeah, so there's the one that will be given, definitely. I mean, then there's other things in the Arbatel, like the Arbatel says that you can bind Satan if you want, but again, I'm not really interested in looking into that. What has interested me, and again, it's something that like purely unexpected and by surprise. It was this past Maundy Thursday, and I was sitting there and I was thinking, I'm going to do an Arbatel rite, and I'm going to look at what's a good hour. And at the time I was looking, it was the hour of, was it Mars? Yeah, it was the hour of Mars on Jupiter. I was like, I don't necessarily have a spirit through the cards to work with.
God punishes you for your own good. It's the Mars of Jupiter.
Yeah. So, but coming up was obviously going to be Jupiter of Sun.
Okay.
You know, and so I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I sort of looked at, because where I've kind of worked with the cards and I've kind of gone to, rather than do that thaumaturgic thing of having the spirit do something, I've kind of written down sort of mythological stories or ideas that might evoke that kind of energy. And I noticed that, like, basically what I had done for Jupiter and Earth, which is Jupiter and Sun, I'd put Christ. And I just thought, oh, that's interesting. Jove, Sun, Jupiter and Earth. So I just kind of did that little rite, and it where I'd sort of been doing this work, I had been starting to get kind of like, for want of a better phrase, like, you know, environmental and sort of visual phenomena happening. And I'd always had this kind of like on the edge of my vision. I mean, it might sound a bit cheesy and cliche to some, but it was very powerful and profound for me. I've always had this like sort of tassel of light, this just kind of wavy light just on the edge, and it's always just kind of been in and out of vision. And then when I did that rite on Maundy Thursday, like it kind of cemented what that light might be. and it just kind of felt like a sort of coming home to something. You know, I don't know whether it was actually Christ, or it was, you know, something of that. But yeah, it just felt, you know, it was a very simple, and in a way, I suppose the most profound rites kind of are the most simple. You know, because where I do the actual, you know, the rite with the tarot, like it's sort of, you know, kind of this again, it's like the Arbatel, it's sort of Greek, but it's also very Christian. So I light 3 candles in the name of the Trinity. Before I start, I recite one of the Psalms. Before I start, like the actual Arbatel prayers themselves. Yeah. And it just felt very, very profound. But yeah, but like coming back to something, going back to that whole idea of how the Arbatel tickles that Anglican schoolboy, like that was kind of a sort of confirmation, I suppose, to borrow a word from Catholicism. And then afterwards, once the rite was finished, because obviously it's Maundy Thursday, it's the Last Supper, I decided, I mean, I don't know whether it's pretentious or not. Off or on? Off. I had a small cup of red wine and a tiny piece of bread, and yeah, that was it. And that for me just felt like, you know,
that's beautiful.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know what to do with that, whether to put that in the book as an anecdote, or, you know, I don't want to necessarily say, oh, you know, you can directly work with Christ by doing exactly as I tell you. I just, you know, I think
in the raw, like, I mean, yeah, I don't know, like, might as well write it down, and then decide later. Let future you or your editor decide, you know, in the future. But for now, it seems like it's worth writing about, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely journaled it, and I've definitely kind of put sprinkles of it in places to kind of come back to.
Yeah.
Through
I had just to share it. I mean, just kind of like something that this reminds me of is there was this one time, I think it was after the spring equinox ceremony of 1998, and I came home and Big Dog. Okay, just a little bit of background. You know, my dad passed away in 93. My mom passed away in 97, and so there I was, a teenager with a house, and I was in a cult. And anyway, so I let all my friends move in. And so anyway, Big Dog was living there and in my house. And so he was like, hey dude, I've got these 2 cubes, you know, of liquid LSD. And I was like, great, you know. And he's like, oh, let's take it, you and me, you know. And then he passed out. You know, he took his, I took mine, he passed out. So I was alone. Everybody in the house was asleep. And so I went into the temple room. My mom had built, before she passed, she built a full-on Golden Dawn temple with the black curtains and the black and white tile and all the furniture and everything. So I was in there. I had my my phallus, my wand, my Philosophus fire wand sticking up on the altar, and I had all kinds of fires and everything. This was, then the house got on fire a few months after that, but that's another story that might be related. But anyway, and so long story short, toward sunrise, I put on my black robe, and then I concealed it underneath a black leather jacket, and I was wearing jeans and a black leather jacket, and I walked up to the top of what my friend calls Obama Mountain. I don't know if that's something he made up, or it's just this little hill behind Occidental College. And so I walked up to the top of that, and then the sun started to rise. So I took off my leather jacket, and my black robe fell down, and I started I think I might have been intoning divine names, or maybe not, I don't know, and I was standing there and the sun was rising and there were flocks of birds that started moving and coming out of trees, and then humans were coming out of their houses and getting in their cars, and then I felt like Adam, just, I don't know how else to describe it. All the elements were perfectly in harmony. It was the equinox. It was sunrise on spring equinox. So it was the dawn of the dawn, and it was a dawn, and the dawn in the dawn in the dawn. And so I became inspired, and I went and I told all the 9 people living in my house rent free, we're going to all pile into 2 cars and we're going to go watch the sunrise tomorrow from the beach. And so we went to the beach and everybody was miserable. Everybody was sort of bickering, and there was couples making out, and there was like, and it was cloudy and you couldn't see the sun. And I was there and I was like, this is one of the petals of the rose, like yesterday I stood at the center and witnessed the whole rose, but there are many petals, so it didn't feel like a loss. It didn't feel like a mistake. It didn't feel like it wasn't supposed, that I was unable to. Yeah, okay. I wanted to share the experience I had the previous sunrise with everyone in the house, and I couldn't. I tried, and what ended up getting shared was this sort of purpley, gray, cloudy, rainy, rocky, experience that was its own. And yeah, and it's one of those things. Well, this is a profound thing to me that opened up doors that I kind of refer back to intuitively, mentally, in various situations. It's like the time that I went up and but should I write it down? Is there a way to write it down that'll make sense? Well, I guess I just shared it on an Esoterinerd Podcast episode. So there's that, the lazy man's way to author.
I mean, I had a similar thing, like with I don't know if you ever heard of it or tried it, but there was it's in either Tikal or Pikal. It's called 2CI. And that was, I think it's a tryptamine, and that was a very, very interesting experience. And again, that was a Saturday. But this was years ago, before I'd even got it. I mean, I knew a little bit about Kabbalah, and sort of I was in the sort of armchair dabbling, and I had like the trigger for the trip was I looked at my friend Pete, and he turned into this cartoonish werewolf and just laughed. And I was like, oh, wow, this is tripping. Life is a cartoon. But then we went back in the house, and I went and stood in the back garden, and I just had this the word to describe it was Edenic. I felt like I was back in Eden, and I was sitting in front of this tree, and I was just contemplating the tree and nature and everything. And everyone else was kind of like, do you want to go indoors and do some coke and whatever and all this business? I was like, no, I'm just going to sit out here. I feel like not necessarily, I don't know whether it was because it was hard. It was hard. That's why I kind of describe it as Edenic, because at one point I felt like, and it must have, in a way, I suppose that's what Eden may have felt like, was that 1 minute I felt like I was Adam, but 1 minute I felt like I was one of the angels. And in another minute, I just felt like one of the creatures, or one of the plants, or one of the stones. And for a brief, I tried to feel like I was God in Eden, but I was like, it's too much. I'm going to come back from that. I don't want that. It's
the
not
microcosmic man, magical mirror of the universe.
Yeah,
something like
but
that.
It was like, I suppose in a way I had a fruit, as it were, but I didn't want the knowledge of the gods. I wanted the knowledge of creation, but that wonderful insight to all the aspects of creation. But I found when I tried to think in that headspace, it just was the onset was too much. Right. But again, I mean, sunrises, like because it was a brief little stint, like, you know, there were other trips like that, and but my tolerance built up over.
Right.
It got to the point where I'd sit there and play chess, and people were like, how can you play chess, like, you know, we're so twisted. And I'm like, well, but your sunrises were always profound. And I just remember thinking, even back then, I was like, is this why they called it the Golden Dawn? Because this is such a beautiful, profound experience every time I do this. Is this why it's called the Golden Dawn? And, you know,
yeah,
sorry,
probably.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, I
Do you
mean,
have
so...
any... Oh, sorry.
No. I was going to say, so although there is the sort of book, I mean, if there is an interest, even if there wasn't an interest, originally I was going to kind of do things through the subreddit, but then I was kind of thinking, does that end up being China's or something like that? So I have got a Substack. I mean, I've yet to put anything on there, but I will probably put things out there. Because like I say, it's not something I necessarily want to hoard. And I think, again, through part of the experience of sharing things on the subreddit is that parts of it have been refined and tweaked, because I might not necessarily know something about astrology, but someone I'm talking to will, and then I'll be like, okay. I mean, I suppose it's that almost Socratic dialogue in a way. It's like me and one other person in the Reddit group will just constantly talk to each other about our practice, and we find that actually we answer each other's questions about the practice, whether directly or indirectly. So yeah, that's another lovely insight into what the Socratic method might actually be. When there's two people talking, there's always a third, isn't there? You know. Yeah. So, I mean, if people are interested, then I will have a Substack. I mean, I can leave some contact details if people did want to reach out, or
should we let them know about the armchair, leaving the armchair?
Oh yeah. So the email, my email address for all of this is pretty simple. It is leaving the armchair at gmail.com.
Spelled like it sounds.
Yep, all one. One word, leaving the armchair at gmail.com. Yep.
All right. And I'm going to put, every time you held up a book, I'm going to try to find that book and put an image of it up in the corner, so that people can get a new list of recommended reading. And
I mean, if you need any help with like images or
sure, I'll let you know if there's one that, because sometimes it's a little blurry, and so I might need like, what book is this? And so, yeah, that's great. Well, it was a lot of fun meeting and chatting and in person, and
I mean,
very cool.
I've got to say, it was probably on par, if not greater than that time that I did try to speak to Alan Moore, because I haven't made any kind of schoolboy error, and you guys have gone, no, what are you even talking about?
Come on, you taught us so much. You taught us about you taught us about you taught us about that Donald Tyson book that we never knew about. I didn't even know some of the things that RC's been getting up to. I didn't realize that it was developed that far. It's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for meeting with us today. It was pretty great.
Genuine, absolute pleasure, honor, all of those things. I mean, if you did want to do a catch up in X amount of time,
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, in a way, that would be a carrot before this donkey to kind of get. I mean, I'm working on it anyway, but you just
So next time we meet, we can say, so how's that going? And hopefully you won't say, "Oh, I forgot about it."
No, definitely not. No.
I'm a
Well,
truck
things
driver
can change
now.
form too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, like 3 or 4 months ago, I would have been like, oh no, I'm too focused on the self-initiation that the Arbitel's taking a back door. But like I say, they called me back, and then I found a new balance between the two. So yeah, all good, all good.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's just occurred to me that RC was saying that when is it Practicus that the Olympics are mentioned?
Yeah.
He would like to get me back to do. Originally, it was going to be to share something with my peers, but he was saying, I mean, I might revisit my old peer group to just talk to them about the Arbatel. And yeah, like I was saying before, it may be that there's a kind of course on RC site or something like that. But yeah.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the Arbatel might be mentioned. Do you remember, Joe? I mean, and it might vary from order to order, but in Theurgicus, the geomantic figures are given, but maybe the spirit which rules them is not given.
I don't think that the spirits are given at that time anyway. I want to say
maybe it is Theurgicus, but then
I mean the
divination is in
Yeah.
Practicus. So I don't know. It's half Theurgicus, half Practicus. It's sort of like, but I don't know exactly when. But the Arbatel isn't in the. It just mentions the Arbatel in passing. But I didn't when I was in Practicus, that didn't jump out to me. And so it didn't even occur to me until and speaking of students being teachers and this kind of thing, there was someone who was made a YouTube comment that you might remember, Rishikesh, something that asked if I had anything on the Arbatel, and I was like,
and
no,
that's where
but maybe I should. And so he started the dominoes rolling that led to
exactly. All thanks to you.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's fun how things.
That's another thank you and mention in the book, definitely.
Yeah.
Nice. This has been another gret episode, I feel.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
And Sophie had quite a presence.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
I hope that was okay.
And that was, I mean, she was there was rainbows and light, and then there was a cat that was I mean, there was the image, and then there was the rainbow light cat itself, and then the sun came, and then there was an actual rainbow and light while you were talking about, all the different colors of the spectrum and everything. So there was a lot of rainbows and light in this one.
Definitely. I mean, a quick anecdote. We were out at the playground with Sophia, and we had triple rainbows. We didn't have double rainbow. We had triple rainbow.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I'm going to check the aphorism of this hour. And I think it was Sun and Saturn. So it was looking up to God, looking up for guidance and inspiration and revelation. And I was like, well, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
There you are.
That's the opening. Yeah. Very nice. And as you can see, the rainbows also are in darkness.
I know.
All right. Well, it was really nice. Yeah. It was really nice doing this, and I think we should definitely do it again.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know when.
With you guys,
but for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, you're just, like saying just Joe's idea of residency, like a passing thing in a podcast, and it's actually been something that's, really spoken to me and really become the core of what I'm kind of doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to hear the story behind that. So
Yeah, different pieces of community just weave together and help people along,
For the good of the neighbor.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, guys. I will see you later.
Blessings. All right. Yeah, Joe's still moving. He's got to move today.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes.
He's in his new place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I have to keep moving furniture. Then I'm going to go to brunch too. So.
Oh, nice. Brunch.
Yeah. I can't
hope
keep
you're not
the
late.
brunchers waiting.
Yeah. And I got to go to sleep. It's the other side of the world. We got an interesting triangle around the world going from Kansas to England to India. All right. Thank you very much. And blessings. LVX.
Yeah. LVX.
Peace profound. My wife Piu making a cameo. Thank you very much to Frater QSAIR for being our guest today on the Esoterinerd Podcast. Thank you, Joe Zabinski, for being my co-host. And special thanks to Susumu Ueda and his father and the other monks at Jofukuin Temple on Mount Koyasan, Shingon Buddhist monks, for, the music you're hearing right now. It's actually the same track that the episode started with. And most importantly, special thanks to you, the Esoterinerd, looking into my eyes. No, the Esoterinerd listening to this podcast. Some folks are hearing audio only. Some folks are on the YouTube. This, for those who can see, for those who can't see me, I'm holding up a book. For those who can see, you might have noticed it says The New World Empire and the Interdimensional Coffee House. Assuming that Amazon doesn't have a problem with it, I'm going to go ahead and make this free on Kindle for the next 5 days, starting right now. There's a link in the description below. If you want to click it over to paperback and get yourself a copy, a physical copy to hold in your hand, then you're free to do so. And feel free to, post it somewhere and tag me, and I'll be happy about that. Otherwise, I'll be just as happy if you get a free Kindle copy. Check it out. I don't know, you might enjoy it. If you want to hear me talk about it on one of my other channels, you can click this link right here. Speaking of my other channels, you might have noticed at the very beginning of this episode, this happened. 9/21, what does that mean? Well, some folks have said, Esoterinerd's back. Thank you. It never went away. It went from 5 episodes a week to 3 episodes a year-ish. But it's still here. It just has changed speed. But I do have other channels, and one thing that all my channels have in common, and even videos that I've made for other people, music videos that I've made for people's music, the old art walk videos that I uploaded to the Hive Art Galleries page. One thing that all these videos have in common is that they're all on a playlist called Pymander Aquarian. And the end screen of this video, if you're watching on YouTube, is going to be that playlist. Up till now, that playlist has been sorted by popularity, so it's always the same 5 or 6, the ones that thousands of people have seen, the best videos, if you will. But just recently, this is a world debut, first time, introducing this to the world, it is now sorted, in the order in which the videos were uploaded. So we're starting with the most recent. So this video, as of today, is at the top of that playlist, and there are 921 videos. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you get the earliest one from like 2006 or something. There's this video, and then immediately after that, which means before now, so yesterday, you have Carl Jung's Black Books. You can see here on the side, those who can see it. Part 74, and below that you have episode 148. That's 148 of Gwydion's Astral Podcast. Came out 3 days ago, called A Flag. Below that you have Tipitaka 176. That's the 3 baskets of pre-sectarian early Buddhism that we have read 176 hours, half-hour episodes of. Below that, in Meccan Revelation, you have the 3 Happy Easter, Holy Saturday, and Good Friday. You get the idea. There's even a sonnet one uploaded recently, but of course filmed probably a decade ago, or a little less than a decade ago. Regardless, I hope you enjoy it. That link will be appearing right here. So go ahead and click that, and wish you well. Until next time.